Kim, good morning. Well, let me tell you, the rhetoric is heating up as the attacks on Gaza intensify as well. And once again, the Israel Defense Forces conducted what they called a targeted raid using tanks in northern Gaza before withdrawing. And this is the third incursion that we know of, although if it was limited in scope, just like the two others before. In a televised news conference Thursday, an IDF spokesman said that Israel Defense Forces will continue ground raids into Gaza in the coming days to prepare for the next stages in Israel's war against Hamas. And Kim, what have they accomplished? Some people may ask. Well, among other things, Israeli forces claim to have killed the deputy head of the Hamas intelligence directorate, who they claim was one of the masterminds of the October 7 terrorist attacks. The spokesman said the purpose of Israel's ground operations is to kill Hamas militants, lay the foundations for an all-out invasion, and neutralize explosive devices, as well as reconnaissance posts. And let me tell you, Kim, we were in Ashkelon yesterday, and we saw how Hamas continues to fire missiles into Israel. There were also several missiles here in Tel Aviv that were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome air defense system. So the fighting still continues here, Kim.
All right, and then, Rafael, let's turn to the humanitarian situation in Gaza. I mean, many groups have called for a ceasefire to allow aid to be delivered to Palestinians. Any signs that might actually happen?
Yeah, and Kim, this is happening. The international community continues to urge restraint during a meeting. I can tell you, this meeting in Brussels Thursday, European Union leaders called for pauses in the Israel-Hamas conflict to allow humanitarian aid to reach Gaza. They would like to open humanitarian corridors and what they called a continued, rapid, safe, and unhindered humanitarian access to Gaza. It was interesting, though, that they stopped short of calling for a ceasefire, something that was previously ruled out by several European leaders. The Palestine Red Crescent Society said 12 aid trucks entered Gaza through the Rafah border crossing with Egypt Thursday, carrying water, food, medicine, and medical supplies as well. But no fuel this time, no fuel. And this amount of aid has been previously described by UN officials, Kim, as not a drop in the bucket, but a drop in the ocean, considering that before the war, about 100 trucks per day crossed into Gaza. Kim.
Yeah, it gives a good perspective. Thanks so much for that, Rafael Romo. Appreciate it. An Al Jazeera journalist has returned to work less than 24 hours after an Israeli airstrike killed his family in Gaza. His network, Al Jazeera, has said. The IDF says it was targeting Hamas infrastructure in the area where the man's family was sheltering. CNN's Salma Abdulaziz has more, but we just want to warn you, parts of her report are graphic.
A journalist, some call it the voice of Gaza, mourns over the body of his teenage son. They're taking their revenge by killing our children, he cries. Al Jazeera says its bureau chief in Gaza, Wael al-Dahdouh, lost his wife, 15-year-old son, 7-year-old daughter, and baby grandson. All killed in an Israeli airstrike, the network says. The reporter had moved his family south of Gaza City after an evacuation order by the IDF, believing it would keep them safe. This conflict is taking a severe toll on journalists, with at least 24 killed so far, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. Reporters are also facing threats, arrests, and censorship. No one and nowhere in this enclave is spared, Palestinians say. Death and funerals are constant. Anguish and agony are on every corner. Every 10 minutes, a child is killed, Save the Children estimates. Anywhere else in the world, it is sons who bury their father, this man says. Why is it different in Gaza? Why do we have to bury our children before they're even grown? Families, desperate to keep their little ones safe, are taking refuge anywhere they can find. Packed UN shelters are turning people away. We can't live like this. We're 17 people living in a school classroom, the woman says. How long are we supposed to live like this? Tell us, world, how long? Eking out a living here is difficult and grim. Food, fuel, water, everything is running out. I don't even know what the point is of being here, she says. We're still terrified and we have nothing, no help. We can bear it. We're grown-ups. But how are these children supposed to handle this? There is no childhood left here for the more than 1 million kids now trapped in this hellscape. And no way, Gazans say, to keep the youngest safe. Sam Abdulaziz, CNN, London.
The Palestinian Red Crescent says 12 aid trucks entered Gaza through the Rafah border crossing with Egypt on Thursday. They were carrying water, food, and medical supplies, but no fuel. Israel has been blocking deliveries of fuel altogether, saying that Hamas would only divert it for military use. The hospital staff say they desperately need fuel to power generators.
You know the importance of fuel. There is a huge shortage. We count the days, even the hours, in order to be able to continue our work. The hospital consumes approximately 2,000 liters of fuel daily. Recently, the hospital stopped functioning, and if it weren't for God's mercy and the actions of the technical staff of engineers, a catastrophe would have befallen.
Talk about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza right now. We're bringing in Layla Barhoum. She's the Policy Advocacy and Communications Manager for Oxfam based in Iraq. Thank you so much for being here with us. So I want to start with what we just saw there. Certainly limited options for hospitals trying to stay open in Gaza right now.
Yeah, the devastating images of the hospitals being crowded and are not able to be full at their capacity is really devastating. We are seeing that doctors are struggling with the number of high injuries coming into the hospitals, the needed operations that need to take place, and all that is dependent on electricity, on fuel, and access to medical equipment and supplies. We have to always remember that hospitals also is taken as shelter for people who are displaced, who have lost their houses, and this is where the situation is getting worse because they have to ration and make sure that they use the resources. The situation came to the point that I don't think Gaza have seen before, and this is something that needs immediate intervention. Otherwise, innocent lives will continue to be lost for injuries, for the lack of medical attention.
Now, the IDF says, this is all just sort of a smoke screen by Hamas, that Hamas actually has lots of fuel. They're just kind of hiding it. What do you say to that?
I mean, there is no way that we cannot say that fuel is not needed now. It's needed as much as before it was before the current cycle of conflict. Fuel was one of the things that used to come into Gaza before this cycle. It was needed, and it was something that Gaza depended on from the international community support. So we are talking about something that used to go inside Gaza before this cycle. There are systems in place. There are UN agencies who are there to monitor the situation, to make sure that fuel is going to where it should be going, which is for civilian purposes. And this is where the messages are coming strongly, is the needs are there, and fuel is needed to make sure that reach it. Institutions are there to monitor the situation.
Beyond the fuel situation, what is the status for most in Gaza right now?
Maybe I can start with the fact that many people in Gaza are emotionally still scared, frightened, emotionally tired, even, and physically tired. They are struggling every day to stay capable to provide for their own needs. The mass displacement is something that is continuing. Shelters are overcrowded by people in schools, and families are hoping each other. Every day we see more families losing their houses, and families are struggling to provide food and water for their needs. Now rationing resources, prioritizing children. People are always asking when this is going to be ending. Is there going to be any ceasefire? And the answer is still not clear yet for them. Day by day, they need to make sure there's bread and there's access to clean water. And these are commodities that are running out from the market. And it's dire more than before. And for Gaza situation, to use this word and to this extent or full meaning is something that we are doing now more than before.
Now, as I mentioned before, some trucks carrying aid have made it through the border to Gaza. Is that making any difference right now?
I mean, any access to aid is very much needed, but we are talking about a situation where Gaza have more than 80% of its population being aid dependent on aid even before this period of conflict. And now what we are seeing is almost 2% of what is needed to enter Gaza. Before this cycle of conflict, Gaza used to get at least 100 trucks of aid and food and water, and now we are seeing a drop in the ocean that is not much going to cover the needs. We are now talking about the total population who are needed for humanitarian assistance and needs, and now we are talking also about the fact that aid is not sustainable, it's not fixed, it needs to be accurate to the needs, but also needs to be regular and needs to be protection for citizens to be able to access this aid. This is not enough. It wasn't enough before, it's not enough now.
Now, many people in Gaza have more, immediate fears, things like being, possibly killed by an IDF strike, for example, but there are longer-term fears as well. Lack of clean water. Many aid agencies like yours are warning of a growing public health crisis, dehydration, disease, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, indeed, there are many factors contributing to a health crisis here. We are talking about lack of fuel and electricity, which means that sewage is not treated. It's been dumped untreated in the water and in the sea. We are talking about lack of access to clean water for hygiene. Already families and schools, families and hosted families are talking about the fact they cannot use water for hygiene purposes. A number of waterborne diseases might be spreading. Cholera, for example, might be a concern for families. And because you need to ration water, you want to drink it, you want to use it for hygiene, of course, the priority will always be for surviving. And now we're talking about wastewater treatment plants are not able to function, but water is not pumped out. This is a whole collapsing of the whole system, and there is waste all over the streets. There is no way for people to receive services like before. The focus now is staying alive, but also staying not to be killed from diseases at the same time.
Yeah, the needs are acute and desperate, certainly. I really appreciate your insights, Leila Barhoum. Thank you so much. The U.S. says it has carried out airstrikes on 2 facilities linked to Iran and its allies in eastern Syria. 2 senior officials say the targets were used for storing weapons and ammunition in the area known as Abu Kamal. The facilities were reportedly used by Iran's Revolutionary Guard and its allied militias. The strikes came after a series of attacks on U.S. forces in the Middle East, which Washington says Tehran was involved in. The U.S. Defense Secretary says the overnight operation wasn't related to the conflict in Gaza. Well, residents are urged to shelter in place as authorities hunt for the suspect in Wednesday's mass shooting. Well, the latest on the search when we come back, plus what we're learning about some of the victims of the massacre in Maine. More details after the break.
CNN Prime Time is where the truth shines. The day's biggest stories, the night's most essential reporting. This is the new CNN Prime Time, weeknights starting at 7 on CNN.
Hi, it's Christina again. I'm here to tell you about an all-new special offer from my friends at Jacuzzi Bathroom Model that you don't want to miss. You already know, Jacuzzi has been making water feel great for more than 65 years. And now, they're bringing you this...
Actually on a similar shift to this, sort of take us through how they've been used historically and how this might compare.
Well, this is exactly was the tornado, in fact, that was used off the coast of Libya. And I was down there as they were launching helicopter missions toward Libya. And in fact, it's a huge ship, and it has a landing craft, it has barges on it, but it also can carry up to 13 tanks, as well as we understand an assault force of up to 900 men. We're not sure how it was dispatched, how it was configured when it was dispatched, but reports here are that in fact there was an assault force that was put on the ship before it left Toulon on its way to the Middle East. It'll be there in about 4 or 5 days.
Interesting details. All right. Thanks so much, Jim Bitterman. Appreciate it. Israeli officials say they have evidence Hamas used weapons supplied by North Korea in the October 7th attack. They say North Korea also gave Hamas technology used big tunnels in its Hancock's reports.
This rocket-propelled grenade is likely from North Korea, used by Hamas during its October 7th attack in Israel. Seen here in the hands of a militant in the back of a pickup truck during the attack. Arms experts point at first to the distinctive red stripe on the F7 RPG.
What we really need to look for is the tip of the munition. There's the absence of the traditional point-initiating fuse there, and instead you can see there's a cast piece of metal.
It's not surprising to see North Korean weapons in Hamas hands, according to experts, but Pyongyang has dismissed the claim as a, quote, groundless and false rumour orchestrated by the United States. Pyongyang is known for being transactional and has long been willing to sell weapons to anyone who would pay. Its arms proliferation in the Middle East is well documented.
North Korea has voiced support for Palestinian independence for decades. They've supplied arms both directly but more commonly through Iran over the course of several decades.
A senior official with the Joint Chiefs of Staff here in Seoul says that they have evidence of North Korea exporting RPGs and potentially other weapons to Hamas, either directly or indirectly, adding that they believe the coordination likely extends to tactical doctrine and training. The JCS citing a North Korean drill several years ago where they used paragliders to carry out a surprise attack on the Blue House, then the presidential office, and making a link to the extensive network of Hamas tunnels known locally as the Gaza Metro. North Korea is also known to have helped Hezbollah, the Iran-backed armed group in Lebanon, with its own tunnel network.
We saw the North Koreans, of course, build those tunnels of their own, potentially in preparation for an attack on the South Korean border. So they wanted to impart that knowledge to Hezbollah. Hezbollah operatives have been training in North Korea since the 1980s.
In a public briefing, South Korea's Army Chief of Staff shared the military's assessment on Hamas's tunnels.
At least from the looks of the shape, size, and technology level of Hamas's underground tunnels, there are many aspects that North Korea has either supported or been involved.
North Korea has not commented on any link with the tunnels in either Lebanon or Gaza. Pyongyang has simply denied that they have been providing weapons to Hamas. Paula Hancock's CNN Seoul.
The U.S. Secretary of State and China's top diplomat are meeting in Washington as concerns continue to grow over the Israel-Hamas war expanding. Antony Blinken said he's looking forward to having, quote, constructive conversations with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi over his three-day visit. In a statement just released, the State Department says that during their meeting on Thursday, Blinken reiterated the U.S. will, quote, continue to stand up for our interests and values and those of our allies and partners. Wang will also meet with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. The Chinese Foreign Minister is set to speak with President Joe Biden during his trip as well. CNN's Beijing Bureau Chief Stephen Zhang is live for us in the Chinese capital with the latest. So Stephen, take us through the meetings, the mood, and the expectations.
Yeah, Kim, we have not heard much detail from either side on what Wang Yi and Blinken talked about. And as you mentioned, he has more meetings coming up in D.C. But the key takeaway here is it's increasingly likely Chinese leader Xi Jinping is now going to the U.S. next month to attend the APEC summit and also meeting with President Biden there, because main mission of Wang Yi's trip is widely seen as to pave the way for his leader to go to San Francisco next month as he hashes out all the final details with his U.S. counterparts. Now, the reason this is happening right now is not coincidental. Obviously, as you mentioned, global conflicts are growing and expanding. So there is some global expectation that the two superpowers need to put a floor on their free-falling relationship, because a lot of these issues simply cannot be resolved or even addressed without them somehow seeing eye to eye on some of the issues. That, of course, includes the Gaza conflict. But also remember, there are domestic reasons here as well. Xi Jinping is still facing very strong economic headwinds, so he needs to show the domestic audience here he is capable of managing and recalibrating international relations, especially when it comes to this relationship with the U.S. That's why these meetings in D.C. are happening, despite tensions very much still remain high. The two militaries just released videos to accuse each other of conducting dangerous maneuvers in and above the South China Sea, putting other sides' warships and warplanes on a collision course. And then, of course, you have these hardened, targeted very much export control measures targeting China. So at the end of the day, a lot of these moves are seen as tactical by analysts. Fundamentally, they say the Chinese leader, his view on the U.S. remains quite dim, as he has put it himself. The U.S. is out to get China, to contain China's rise and suppress Chinese interests. But at least right now, the two sides seem to agree there's this narrow window of opportunity between now and early next year, when the U.S. presidential election season kicks off in earnest. They want to take advantage of this opportunity to stabilize or even improve this relationship.
Yeah, let's see if that happens. All right, Stephen Zhang, thank you so much. And China's former premier Li Keqiang has died. According to Chinese state media, Li suffered a sudden heart attack early this morning. Li served as China's #2 leader until last October, overseeing his country's economy for more than a decade. He was once viewed as a reform-minded contender for the country's top leadership role. Japanese officials sent their condolences, saying the former premier played an important role in Japan-China relations. Li was 68 years old. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he can see the end of the war in his country. Now, this comes after new American and Danish defense support measures were announced on Thursday. U.S. Secretary of State says his country's security assistance package includes $150 million worth of arms and equipment. President Zelensky says Denmark's offering is over $500 million worth of tanks, drones, and ammunition. U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby has blasted Russia for its continued invasion of Ukraine, saying Russia, quote, continues to show no regard for the lives of soldiers. Here he is.
Since the 11th of October, Russia has suffered significant losses in this offensive attempt of theirs, including at least 125 armored vehicles around Avdiivka and more than a battalion's worth of equipment. We expect more Russian attacks to come. This is a dynamic conflict, and we need to remember that Russia still maintains some offensive capability and may be able to achieve some tactical gains in the coming months. Now, to pursue that outcome in Avdiivka and elsewhere on the battlefield, Russia continues to show no regard for the lives of its soldiers. We believe they have suffered thousands of casualties in their effort to conduct this offensive, some of them on the orders of their own leaders.
Now, Kirby also said the U.S. has information that the Russian military is executing its own soldiers who refuse to follow orders. All right, still to come, recovery efforts are underway after Hurricane Otis slams into Acapulco as a powerful Category 5 storm, killing more than 24 people. Stay with us.
This Halloween, trick or treat yourself to the BlendJet 2 portable blender. It's to die for. BlendJet 2 gives you monstrous power for a delicious smoothie, shake, or frap. Anytime, anywhere. Cleaning BlendJet 2 is scary easy. Just blend water with a drop of soap. Recharge quickly with any USB port. Boogie on over to blendjet.com and order yours today.
If your roof is showing danger signs like streaks or raised shingles, it could be trouble, and a new roof could cost $10,000, $15,000, or $20,000. Introducing RoofMax, the first professional and affordable roofing treatment that is scientifically proven to strengthen and extend the life of your roof. With RoofMax, you'll have the protection of a brand new roof and save thousands. RoofMax's skilled technicians apply a safe, effective, and affordable natural treatment. And within hours, you have a roof that performs like a new roof. RoofMax's exclusive treatment resaturates old, dried shingles with a natural, bio-friendly formula that quickly restores flexibility and water-repelling protection guaranteed. Look, this is a 17-year-old asphalt shingle. It literally disintegrates. But here's an identical shingle that we treated with RoofMax's proven formula. It passed rigorous flexibility testing from The Ohio State University as a new shingle. So a RoofMax roof can also pass a home inspection if you get it ready to sell or for insurance, saving you money. RoofMax has treated over 50 million square feet of roofs all across America. And just check out our website for the thousands of 5-star reviews.
You know, I was skeptical at first with the existing condition of the roofs. We were having high winds and shingles were blowing off the roofs continually. But, you know, 5 years later, after the application, The roofs look great, and we have no issues with any shingles blowing off the roof.
Keep your family safe and happy with RoofMax. Call or go online now for a comprehensive leak threat analysis and roof maintenance tune-up. A $539 value free. RoofMax. More life, less money, guaranteed.
Call 1-800-520-7901. That's 1-800-520-7901. Or log on to roofmax.com. Call 1-800-520-7901 now.
When moderate to severe ulcerative colitis takes you off course, put it in check with Rinvoq, a once-daily pill. When I wanted to see results fast, Rinvoq delivered rapid symptom relief and helped leave bathroom urgency behind. Check.
When UC tried to slow me down, I got lasting steroid-free remission with Rinvoq. Check.
And when UC caused damage, Rinvoq came through by visibly repairing my colon lining. Check. Rapid symptom relief, lasting steroid-free remission.
And a chance to visibly repair the colon lining. Check, check, and check.
Rinvoq can lower your ability to fight infections, including TB, serious infections and blood clots, some fatal, cancers including lymphoma and skin cancer, death, heart attack, stroke, and tears in the stomach or intestines occurred. People 50 and older with at least one heart disease risk factor have higher risks. Don't take if allergic to Rinvoq, as serious reactions can occur. Tell your doctor if you are or may become pregnant.
Put UC in check and keep it there with Rinvoq.
Ask your gastroenterologist about Rinvoq and learn how AbbVie can help you save.
Closed captioning brought to you by InventHelp. Call 1-800-710-0020.
Do you have an invention idea but don't know what to do next? Call InventHelp today. They can help you get started with your idea.
Call now. 800-710-0020.
The U.S. economy defied expectations again in the face of stubborn inflation and high interest rates. Gross domestic product, or GDP, soared over the summer quarter to a 4.9% annualized rate. It's more than double the growth in the spring and faster than economists predicted. Now, that strength isn't expected to continue as the economy faces soaring bond yields and the resumption of student loan repayments. A judge will hold a hearing Friday morning to determine if Ivanka Trump can be forced to testify in her father's civil fraud trial. A civil case brought by New York's Attorney General accuses the former president, his sons, and the Trump Organization of overstating its wealth for years on financial statements. Lawyers for her family and its businesses argue that Ivanka shouldn't have to take the stand since she was previously dismissed from the case. Recovery efforts are underway in Acapulco, Mexico, after Hurricane Otis caused extensive damage. Power is slowly being restored, but operations at the airport are still suspended, and crews are working to clear debris from a landslide on a highway leading into the city. At least 27 people are dead and 4 others are missing after the power storm slammed into Mexico's Pacific coast. CNN's Gustavo Valdez reports.
This is typically what people come to Acapulco for, the nice beach, the nice surf, but right now it doesn't take long to see what happened after Otis came by. You see all the debris, it's plants, it's palm trees, it's metal, it's brick. This is the front of those fancy hotels where people spend hundreds of dollars to come and enjoy some time off. It's completely ruined. Not only the front, look up. Look at what happened to this building. You cannot even see any proof that anybody could have been living there. We have reports that people were actually in these buildings when the hurricane came, but you can see the danger they were in because of the damage that buildings like this have suffered after Otis. And this is something that we see not only on these nice, expensive areas, the resort areas, the more poor parts of the city are also suffering. The people are telling us they're not getting help, they're not getting water, they're not getting food. We saw looting in some streets, in some stores. People were coming out. In most cases, they were just taking food, water, something to drink. There were some that took advantage of the situation and they walked away with big screen TVs, but mostly people were telling us they just needed something to get by.
And that wraps this hour. I'm Kim Brunuwer. Our coverage continues with Max Foster next.
prime time is where the truth shines. The day's biggest stories, the night's most essential reporting. This is the new CNN Prime Time, weeknights starting at 7 on CNN.
Hi, it's Christina again. I'm here to tell you about an all-new special offer from my friends at Jacuzzi Bath Remodel that you don't want to miss. You already know, Jacuzzi has been making water feel great for more than 65 years. And now, they're bringing you this special TV offer. We're waiving all installation costs and postponing all payments for 1 year. Jacuzzi Bath Remodel has a design you'll love at a price you can afford. And, best of all, they can install it in as little as 1 day with no stress and no mess. Are you ready to see your new shower? Here it is.
It's fabulous! Taking a shower had gone from being a joy to being a burden. I was afraid I would fall. I called, and just 1 day, I had a shower I could feel safe in.
No matter your situation, Jacuzzi Bath Remodel has a solution for you. From a safer, easy entry shower with features like grab bars and a custom seat to keep you feeling comfortable and independent at home, to a stunning family bath, or how about a luxurious upgrade with a timeless design that will look great for years to come. Plus, they're built to last with a lifetime warranty from an iconic brand you know you can trust.
It was done the same day. We did not have to wait.
It's absolutely perfect. It's exactly what I was dreaming of.
If you haven't already experienced what Jacuzzi Bath Remodel can do for you, your family, and your home, don't wait any longer. Now is the best time to call. It's never been easier. Take advantage of this special TV offer today.
Go to jacuzzibathremodel.com or call 800-321-0299. That's 800-321-0299. Call now.
In Vernon, we vibe on vitality, and we savor summer longer. Here we come alive on forest trails and play in colorful orchards that weave into rolling mountains. Raise your glass to the apples on trees and savor summer a little bit longer. Now's the time to travel to BC. Fall is on in Vernon.
Hello, welcome to our viewers joining us in the US and around the world. I'm Max Foster. Bianca off today. It is Friday, October the 27th, 9 a.m. here in London, 4 a.m. in Lewiston, Maine, where police are in their second night of hunting for the suspect in 2 back-to-back mass shootings that killed 18 people and wounded 13. Law enforcement descended on the suspect's last known address yesterday and will be scouring other locations in the hours ahead. Police are looking for this man, 40-year-old Robert Card. He's considered armed and dangerous. He's charged with multiple counts of murder. Officials are telling residents in the areas around Lewiston, Maine, to stay vigilant, remain inside and lock their doors as they search for Card. Tensions rose last evening when, for a time, it appeared the manhunt may have been ending, but it didn't. CNN's Brian Todd was on the scene as police surrounded the suspect's home.
Starting at about 7 p.m. Eastern time, when law enforcement assets just flooded the zone here and surrounded Robert Card's home behind me, about 250 yards behind me, with a lot of tactical vehicles, armored vehicles, personnel, air assets like drones and other things. They had a K9 team here. They surrounded the house. At that point, they came up to our cameras here at this position and said, "You've got to cut your camera lights off because the camera lights are creating a danger for law enforcement." So at that point, we of course cut our lights off and we filmed for the next 2.5 hours in complete darkness, but we did get a pretty good view of everything that was going on. At one point, after we had turned our lights off, and they had surrounded the house. They moved a tactical vehicle pretty close to the house. Then they moved a spotlight onto the house. At that point, they began kind of a one-way dialogue. And we were told later on that it was unknown if the suspect was in the house or not, but they began a one-way dialogue. A law enforcement officer on a loudspeaker was saying things like, "Come out with your hands up. We don't want anyone else to get hurt. Please come out and follow our instructions. Walk to the front of the truck," indicating there was some kind of a truck in the driveway. And he even spoke on a personal level, saying, "We know this could be intimidating to you. We really just don't want anyone to get hurt. So please come out and talk to us." That was a one-way dialogue. There was no indication that there was anyone on the other end conversing with them. But they did move around a lot. They positioned their drones, their spotlights all around the house, seemingly looking for something. So kind of a dramatic night out here. And what they got out of it, we don't know.
Officials say the gunman first attacked a bowling alley and then a restaurant on Wednesday evening around 7 p.m. as people were enjoying a night out with family and friends. More now on how the shootings unfolded from CNN's Omar Jimenez.
A multi-agency manhunt is underway for the suspect in 2 mass shootings in Maine.
I'm profoundly saddened to stand before you today to report that 18 people lost their lives and 13 people injured in last night's attacks.
Both incidents happened Wednesday night in the town of Lewiston.
Multiple victims on screen, multiple victims on every unit you can find.
State police say the first call came in at 6:56 p.m., reporting a man shooting at the just-in-time recreation, which includes a bowling alley. Then, at 7:08 p.m., the communications center received multiple 911 calls about an active shooter inside Shemengi's Bar and Grill, about a 10-minute drive away from the bowling alley.
Respond to the town of Lewiston for 2 active shooter locations. Again, the town of Lewiston for active shooter incidents, all available units to Lewiston.
At 8:06, police released photos of the shooter to the media.
The victims at the just-in-time establishment, 7 people are deceased there, 1 female and 6 males. Victims at the Schmegli's Billiards, 8 are deceased. 7 males inside the establishment, 1 male outside of the establishment.
3 other victims were pronounced dead at local hospitals. One man at the bowling alley during the shooting says he hid inside a bowling machine.
Out of nowhere, he just came in and there was a loud pop. I just booked it down the lane and I slid basically into where the pins are and climbed up in the machine and was on top of the machines for about 10 minutes until the cops got there.
Megan Hutchinson tells CNN that she was inside the bowling alley with her 10-year-old daughter Zoe, who was grazed by one of the bullets. She was injured, but not hospitalized.
It's just like shocking. Like it's something that you think would never happen. I never thought I'd grow up and get a bullet in my leg. Why? Like, why do people do this?
At 9:26 p.m., Lewiston police received a call identifying the shooter as 40-year-old Robert Card, former Army reservist. By 9:56 p.m., investigators found Card's white Subaru hatchback near a boat launch in the nearby community of Lisbon, among where authorities are now actively searching for him.
We've had everything from people calling about, noises in the basement, noises in the woods, suspicious people, gunshots, all night long since the incident in Lewiston. We have our whole department working.
Now, an entire community is under lockdown, being told to shelter in place.
It's very unnerving right now. Seeing the cops coming around here, that makes me feel a million times better. In a situation like this, I wish I had a firearm.
Omar Jimenez, CNN, Lewiston, Maine.
The Gun Violence Archive, which tracks shootings, says the rampage is the deadliest mass shooting of the year in the US. It says there have been more than 500 mass shootings in the US so far this year. The agency defines a mass shooting as one in which at least 4 people are shot or killed in a single event. You can see 2021 is listed as the most violent year in the past decade, with 690 mass shootings in the US. While the US as a whole sees hundreds of incidents of gun violence, this is unusual for Maine. Senator Susan Collins says the death toll in Wednesday's attack is nearly as many murders as the state sees in a year.
Maine, I would point out, has one of the highest rates of gun ownership
almost approached the number for the entire year.
The mass shooting has prompted a congressman from Maine to flip his position on the assault weapons ban. Democratic Representative Jared Golden says he now supports the ban. Golden is from Lewiston, where the mass shooting occurred, and says he feels like he let down his community.
The time has now come for me to take responsibility for this failure, which is why I now call on the United States Congress to ban assault rifles like the one used by the sick perpetrator of this mass killing in my hometown.
Well, we're learning more about some of the people who lost their lives in the rampage in Maine. These are a few of the victims who've been identified so far. Arthur Strout, a father of 5 children, was killed at the restaurant where he had been playing pool. 39-year-old Peyton Brewer Ross celebrated his daughter's 2nd birthday 2 weeks ago. 34-year-old Tommy Conrad was killed at the bowling alley where he was a manager. He leaves behind a 9-year-old daughter. Brian McFarlane was part of the local deaf community and usually went to the restaurant to play cornhole on Wednesdays. Joseph Walker was a manager of the restaurant. He was killed when he tried to stop the shooter from killing others. And 53-year-old Trisha Asseline worked part-time at the bowling alley. She was killed as she tried to call 911. Now, the NHL's Boston Bruins held a moment of silence before their game on Thursday night in memory of the victims of the deadly shooting.
Our hearts are with each of the victims, their families, and all of those affected, as we stand with the Maine community, Lewiston strong. At this time, we ask that you please join us for a moment of silence in remembrance of the lives lost and in solidarity with the city.
The Bruins wore decals on their helmets with a blue outline of the state of Maine. The visiting team, the Anaheim Ducks, taped up their hockey sticks with blue tape. Players from both teams raised money for the victims' families by auctioning off signed hockey sticks. The Bruins hung a black jersey on the glass behind the home bench that read Lewiston Strong with the number 207, the area code for Maine. Just ahead, we'll go live to Tel Aviv for the latest on the Israel-Hamas war. And China's top diplomat is making the rounds in Washington. More on his meetings with top US officials and one coming up with President Joe Biden as well. Just ahead.
Viruses and bacteria float all around us. Unlike air fresheners, only new Lysol Air Sanitizer kills 99.9% of viruses and bacteria in the air. Because scent can't sanitize, Lysol can.
As loved members of our family, we want our cats to be happy. But when they spray outside the litter box, fight with other house cats, or scratch the furniture, they could be telling you they're stressed. To help them feel more calm, plug in Feel Away Optimum. The relaxing pheromones of Feel Away Optimum help your cat feel more comfortable and secure at home. Feel Away Optimum, enhanced calming for cats, from the #1 vet recommended brand for feline calming. Available at pet stores or ask your vet.
Attention, Medicare has expanded Dexcom coverage for people with diabetes.
If you have diabetes, getting on Dexcom G7 is the single most important thing you can do. It eliminates painful finger sticks, helps lower A1C, and is covered by Medicare.
Before using the Dexcom G7, I was really frustrated. My A1C was stuck.
Dexcom G7 sends your glucose numbers to your phone or Dexcom receiver without painful finger sticks. The arrow shows the direction your glucose is heading, up, down, or steady. And because Dexcom G7 is the most accurate CGM, you can make better decisions about food, medication, and activity in the moment.
After using the Dexcom G7, my A1C has never been lower. I be line dancing 3 times a week, and I'm just living a great life now.
It's so easy to use. Dexcom G7 has given me confidence and control that everything I need is right there on my phone.
Now millions more are covered by Medicare. Take advantage of the expanded coverage by calling today.
Professionals to get all your home projects done well. Get started today at Angie.com.
only 47. Aneurysm. Did he have life insurance? Do you? No. You gotta get on it. Check out SelectQuote. Trust me, the peace of mind, it's worth it.
Life insurance is too important to put off another day. That's why SelectQuote makes getting coverage you need easy, for less than $1 a day. Now get up to a $2 million policy with no medical exam and same-day coverage.
Visit SelectQuote.com. We shop you save.
Hi, I'm Sharon, and I lost 52 pounds on Golo. I realized I needed to make a change when I looked in the mirror and did not recognize myself. I saw the Golo commercial and I liked how they weren't actors, they just seemed like people that were just happy with themselves and had true results. Since being on Golo, I truly feel like I'm back to the best me I can be. Try Golo. It worked for me, and I'm real.
Mornings. Cough? Congestion?
I'm feeling better. All in one and done with new Mucinex Kickstart.
Headache?
Better now.
New Mucinex Kickstart gives all-in-one and done relief with a morning jolt of instant cooling sensation. It's comeback season.
Meet Gold Bond Daily Healing, a powerhouse lotion that moisturizes, heals, and smooths dry skin with 7 moisturizers and 3 vitamins. And new Gold Bond Healing Sensitive, clinically shown to heal and moisturize dry, sensitive skin. Gold Bond.
Israel's military says it carried out its second targeted raid into Gaza in the past 2 days. This is part of the preparations for an eventual ground assault. According to the Israel Defense Forces, the new raid targeted Hamas infrastructure with strikes on buildings in open areas, and Israeli troops later withdrew. The IDF announced on Thursday that limited ground raids will be carried out over the next few days. The Israeli military also said that an airstrike on Thursday killed a senior Hamas leader who was involved in planning the October 7th attacks. Israel claims it's killed scores of senior Hamas leaders since the fighting began. Amid the ongoing Israeli airstrikes, EU leaders are appealing for safe corridors to deliver aid to Gaza, where basic necessities are in short supply. Sinez Rafael Romo covering this live for us from Tel Aviv, and we've had some new video, Rafael.
Yeah, that's correct. And Max, let me tell you, the Israel Defense Forces just confirmed that for a second night, they have conducted what they call targeted raids inside Gaza before withdrawing. This was the 4th raid that we know of into Gaza since the beginning of this war. The Israeli military has published images, video about the raid showing tanks and armored vehicles moving on a road near agricultural land. Those images also show strikes on buildings and open areas. In a statement, the IDF said that this particular raid was meant to target Hamas infrastructure, including anti-tank missile launch sites, military command and control centers, as well as Hamas militants. In a televised news conference Thursday, an IDF spokesman said the Israel Defense Forces will continue ground raids into Gaza in the coming days to prepare for the next stages in Israel's war and against Hamas. The spokesman said the purpose of the Israel's ground operations is to kill Hamas militants, lay the foundations for an all-out invasion, and neutralize explosive devices and reconnaissance posts. And let me tell you, Max, we were in Ashkelon yesterday, and we saw how Hamas continues to fire missiles into Israel. There were also several missiles here in Tel Aviv that were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome last night, as you know, the air defense system here. Max?
Lots of pressure growing amongst Israeli allies calling for a pause in the fighting, if not they're not going as far as obviously a formal ceasefire. But is there any suggestion that the Israelis will consider a pause at this time?
Yeah, it doesn't seem very likely, Max, but as you were saying, the international community continues to urge restraint. During a meeting in Brussels Thursday, European Union leaders called for a pause in the Israel-Hamas conflict to allow humanitarian aid to reach Gaza. They would like to open humanitarian corridors, they say, and what they called a continued, rapid, safe, and unhindered humanitarian access to Gaza. It was interesting, though, that they stopped short of calling for a ceasefire, something that was previously ruled out by several European leaders. The Palestine Red Crescent Society said 12 aid trucks entered Gaza through the Rafah border crossing with Egypt on Thursday, carrying water, food, medicine, and medical supplies, but no fuel, Max. That's very important. And the amount of aid has been previously described by UN officials as not a drop in the bucket, but a drop in the ocean, considering that before the war, Max, about 100 trucks per day crossed into Gaza to deliver humanitarian aid. Back to you.
Rafael Romo, thank you so much for joining us from Tel Aviv for a look at the big picture of the military situation in the region. We're joined by Nick Ryan, a retired general of the Australian Army. Thanks so much for joining us, Nick. You've seen I don't know where Australia exactly stands on this, but certainly other allies are calling for a pause in the fighting because they can't ask for a ceasefire. Because that's got this language associated with it, hasn't it? But it doesn't sound like from Raphael that the Australians are even considering it at this time. That the Israelis are even considering it.
No, I don't think so, and they would be keen to press on with the air attacks as well as these limited raids into Gaza. I think the limited raids are interesting. They offer a different model for ground attacks into Gaza than a large-scale invasion, which might inform Israeli decisions in the days ahead.
In terms of what you're seeing in the video we're getting from these raids, what do you think they're exactly doing?
Well, these things will be conducted to gather intelligence. They'll be assessing the impact of the air attacks, and they'll be also testing Hamas tactics and as well as Israeli tactics. I mean, if the Israelis really come under a lot of pressure from the United States and Europe, these limited raids into Gaza might be a different approach that they select instead of a large-scale ground incursion. And we should remember, the more forces that the Israelis send into Gaza, the more risk they're taking on their northern border and in the West Bank as well.
It does seem as though discussion seems to be moving towards a more limited incursion. I mean, how do you rate incursions? When's an incursion, and when isn't one?
Well, an incursion is when they're not establishing a permanent or semi-permanent presence there. These raids are about 24 hours duration and they're withdrawn quickly, which means the Israelis don't have to defend themselves for long periods of time in a very difficult urban environment. So they do offer a different model for the Israelis going forward.
I wanted to just ask you as well, if I could, about events in Syria, just because it is inevitably speaking to this, even though the Americans are being very clear that their sort of attacks on Iranian-backed groups over the last 24 hours is nothing to do with what's happening around Israel. Israel wasn't even informed about it, but we are seeing Iranian-backed groups firing at a US base, and now the US base effectively firing back.
Yeah, we've seen about a dozen attacks on US forces that are based in the region, and the Americans go, listen, enough's enough. The Americans need to send a message that they won't accept these attacks, they want to deter further attacks. And I think quietly in the background, many countries in the region would not be displeased with the Americans taking out locations that are associated with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps.
How does it speak to the wider conflict, though, or the conflict between Hamas and Israel? Because inevitably, what we're all concerned about is tensions rising across the region, and both of these different conflicts play into that, don't they?
I don't have any conflict.
Yeah, I think the statement that was issued by the US administration on these strikes, which was very, very carefully worded, gets to this tension, this high wire rope that the Americans are walking on to protect themselves, but not do something that escalates the situation in the wider region, inflames publics, and causes more instability in different countries in the region. They've really got a very difficult tightrope to walk on at the moment.
And can I just ask you about the language around ceasefire, pauses, lulls in the fighting? I mean, really, what is the difference? I understand this idea that the Allies have supported the idea that Israel has a right to defend itself against Hamas, and how a ceasefire, calling for a ceasefire, might undermine that language. But a lull, calling for a lull or a pause in the fighting, is effectively the same thing, isn't it?
I think the effect on the ground would be similar. I mean, the Israelis may ease off on some of their attacks, but they're not going to want to have their hands tied behind their back in prosecuting this operation against Hamas. But at some point in time, provision of additional assistance to civilians in Gaza is going to be even more necessary than what it is now, and the Israelis will come under more pressure to allow that.
Okay, Mick Ryan, as ever, thank you so much for joining us with your analysis. Let's get more on the US airstrikes against facilities in eastern Syria then that are linked to Iran. The strikes followed a series of attacks on US forces in the region. CNN's Oren Lieberman has the details on that.
The U.S. carried out airstrikes in eastern Syria against two facilities used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and affiliated groups in a series of attacks we've seen over the course of the past week and a half or so against U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria. The Pentagon says two F-16 fighter jets used precision-guided munitions to target these facilities, an ammo storage facility, and a weapons storage facility. Officials say these facilities were used and assisted in this series of attacks we've seen. Since October 17th, the Pentagon says we've seen 19 attacks, drone attacks, and rocket attacks against U.S. forces in these countries, resulting in more than 20 minor injuries, and one U.S. civilian contractor who was killed as the result of a false alarm because of a belief of another one of these attacks. Given the situation, the U.S. felt it had to respond. But the U.S. and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin were very clear in this warning, describing these as self-defense strikes that were narrowly targeted to protect U.S. forces, but also to send a message that there would be more strikes if the attacks on U.S. forces continued. I'll read you a part of Austin's statement here. First, attributing these to Iran and pinning this on Iran. Iran wants to hide its hand and deny its role in these attacks against our forces. We will not let them. If attacks by Iran's proxies against U.S. forces continue, we will not hesitate to take further necessary measures to protect our people. And then, these narrowly tailored strikes in self-defense were intended solely to protect and defend U.S. personnel in Iraq and Syria. We have already seen the U.S. bolster its force presence in the region because of a worry of escalation on the part of Iran's proxies, and that would be Hezbollah in Lebanon, as well as these Iranian proxies in Iraq and Syria. The U.S. deploying and in the process of deploying 900 troops to the region, including a THAAD air defense battery and Patriot air defense systems. And that's on top of everything we've already seen the U.S. move to the region. 2 carrier strike groups and amphibious ready group, all as a warning to Iran to stay out of this fight. The question now, of course, did these airstrikes and these targets on facilities used by Iran's IRGC and affiliated groups, did that get the message, and has deterrence been restored, or does this continue? The U.S. trying very hard to make sure the conflict in Gaza does not spread to the wider region, even as we've seen anti-U.S. and anti-Israel protests across the Middle East. Oren Lieberman, CNN at the Pentagon.
The search for the man suspected of the mass shootings in Maine continues into Friday, with law enforcement checking Robert Card's home, hoping to find him, and a positive motive as well. We're going to keep following that.
It's Empire Today's biggest sale, the 50-50-50 sale. 50% off carpet and flooring, 50% off padding and materials, and 50% off installation. That's right, half off your entire project. You can save thousands. Empire's 50-50-50 sale won't last long. Don't miss 50% off carpet and flooring, 50% off padding and materials, and 50% off installation.
800-588-2300 Empire. Today.
Something unexpected has arrived from Experian. A debit card. The all-new Experian Smart Money debit card and digital checking account. It finds payments that could raise your credit scores without adding debt. It's no ordinary debit card. It's the Smart Debit Card, only from Experian. And that is worth celebrating. Build credit without the debt. Get your new Experian Smart Money debit card and digital checking account through the Experian app.
I was stuck. Unresolved depression symptoms were in my way.
I needed more from my antidepressant. Vraylar helped give it a lift.
Adding Vraylar to an antidepressant is clinically proven to help relieve overall depression symptoms better than an antidepressant alone. And in Vraylar clinical studies, most saw no substantial impact on weight. Elderly dementia patients have increased risk of death or stroke, report unusual changes in behavior or suicidal thoughts. Antidepressants can increase these in children and young adults, report fever, stiff muscles, or confusion, as these may be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements, which may be permanent. High blood sugar, which can lead to coma or death, weight gain, and high cholesterol may occur. Movement dysfunction and restlessness are common side effects. Stomach and sleep issues, dizziness, increased appetite, and fatigue are also common. Side effects may not appear for several weeks.
I didn't have to change my treatment. I just gave it a lift.
Ask about Vraylar and learn how AbbVie can help you save.
One whole story, one whole hour. World's best journalists dig deeper.
The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper, Sunday at 10 on CNN.
Even as a child growing up here, I knew there was something special about this place and the people who call it home. It's time to discover the magic of the township of Langley for yourself. Local artists, farmers, brewers, and makers extend a friendly invitation for you to stop by and say hello. Experience their creativity and passion, and discover why the Township of Langley is the perfect destination for your next adventure. The Township of Langley is yours to explore. Visit tourism-langley.ca for a complete guide.
HPV is a virus that typically has no signs and symptoms, and it's spread via sexual activity. Unfortunately, condoms aren't giving us full protection from HPV. There's still those other body parts that are touching. HPV can stay asleep in a person's body for up to 40 years before it wakes up, and it's linked to a long list of cancers.
The HPV vaccine is a cancer prevention tool. We know it is very safe, it is very effective, and it's giving you long-term protection against cancer.
I'm Arlette Saenz at the White House, and this is CNN.
Well, back to our top story this hour. A community on edge as an intensive manhunt is underway in the US state of Maine. An arrest warrant has been issued for Robert Card, the suspect in a shooting rampage that left 18 people dead and 13 injured. He's considered to be armed and dangerous. People in several counties have been asked to shelter in place. Multiple schools and colleges remain closed. The motive for the shooting is unclear, but law enforcement sources say Card recently broke up with his longtime girlfriend. Investigators think he may have gone to the bowling alley and bar because they were places he used to frequent with her. They say she was signed up to play in a tournament on Wednesday night. Now, law enforcement officials are expected to return on Friday to Card's last known address in Bowden, Maine. Authorities are also digging into his background and his military records, searching for clues to help track him down. CNN's Pamela Brown has more.
Swarms of federal and local officers converge as the manhunt for Robert Card intensifies.
Mr. Card is considered armed and dangerous.
His background giving a few potential clues about the shooting that left at least 18 dead and more than a dozen injured. His Army records show the 40-year-old was a petroleum supply specialist in the reserves, but never served in combat. A former Army reservist who served with Card telling CNN that he is a skilled marksman and outdoorsman who was among the best shooters in his unit. While he was training in upstate New York over the summer, Card reported hearing voices and threatened to shoot up a National Guard base, according to law enforcement sources. The National Guard saying he was, quote, behaving erratically. He was transported to a hospital at the U.S. Military Academy for medical evaluation and stayed for 2 weeks. His family telling CNN he did not have a long history of mental health issues. Quote, this is something that was an acute episode. This is not who he is. His sister-in-law said, quote, this is a good family. On his Twitter page, Card liked right-wing posts, including by Tucker Carlson, Donald Trump Jr., Republican members of Congress, and multiple posts criticizing President Biden on the economy. His social media also shows photos of him fishing. Card's vehicle was found at a boat ramp less than 20 miles from the shooting scene, and public records show he owns a boat. The Coast Guard is also part of the search. According to another former soldier who served with Card, he had extensive training, including land navigation. Quote, so he would be very comfortable in the woods.
The shooting was in Lewiston. Card's most recent address is in a rural area of a nearby town called Bowdoin, according to public records, which also show that his family owns a series of properties nearby. Law enforcement sources say Card recently split up with a longtime girlfriend, and they're pursuing a theory that he allegedly targeted the bowling alley and bar because he used to go there with her and was supposed to be at the bar that night.
Based on our investigation, we believe this is someone that should not be approached.
Card's brother telling CNN they are trying to reach him, urging him to surrender. Quote, "We have helped law enforcement in any way possible, and the police have been given anything that we can offer to facilitate their efforts." The brother of the suspect also telling me this is many people's worst nightmare. Indeed it is. And one of the big outstanding questions is why Robert Card was able to leave that mental health clinic after expressing thoughts of wanting to harm fellow soldiers and able to gain access again to his legally possessed multiple weapons. We know that Maine does not have a red flag law, which allows family members to petition a court to have weapons taken away from another family member in crisis. Pamela Brown, CNN, Washington.
The Israeli government is already moving ahead with plans to rebuild the towns near Gaza that were savagely assaulted on October the 7th. More than 1,400 people were murdered in those attacks, many of them in their homes. On Thursday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the newly formed authority that's being tasked with the rebuilding projects. The Prime Minister said security will be the top priority as the communities are made whole again. Meanwhile, volunteers were at the site of one of the many massacres, cleaning up the terrible aftermath. I'll warn you, the video contains graphic content. The location is Kibbutz Holib, near the Egyptian border. The cleaners are volunteers with Zaka, a group that gathers the bodies of Israelis who died from unnatural deaths. At least 10 people were killed when Hamas attacked the settlement. Some of the volunteers describe what they found.
We were cleaning a bedroom from a little kid, a baby that was maybe 3 years old. You saw her shoes, you saw her blanket, everything was full of blood. And you could see the bullets coming through the main door over there in that bedroom.
He survived the Holocaust, the first Holocaust. He did not survive this Holocaust.
Meanwhile, the European Union is calling for humanitarian pauses in the fighting inside Gaza. EU leaders are also appealing for the creation of safe corridors to deliver aid, but are not calling for a complete ceasefire. The Red Crescent says another 12 aid trucks entered Gaza on Thursday, but did not bring any fuel, which Israel doesn't allow. Israel says Hamas will steal the fuel and use it for rocket attacks. The fuel is a lifesaver in Gaza, partly because hospitals need it to run their power generators. Gaza's health ministry, which is controlled by Hamas, says 12 hospitals in the area are out of commission. Israel claims Hamas still has fuel stored in Gaza. The European Union is also pledging more than $50 million in new aid for Gaza. The decision was announced after the first day of the Leaders' Summit in Brussels on Thursday. EU officials say the group has already delivered more than 50 tons of new aid to Gaza residents. Let's bring us in as Jim Bitterman live from Paris. Jim, French President Macron has been visiting the region. That's been part of this story here, but also the story back in Europe of how these nations actually really struggled to find consensus on how to move ahead on this.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think one of the most frustrating things for them is that they'd like to get humanitarian aid to the Gazans, basically, because they know how they're suffering. And the French are among those people who have, in fact, taken it upon themselves. The government sent off a plane load of humanitarian aid to Egypt. It has been taken over by the Palestinian Red Crescent, which is the equivalent of the Red Cross. But basically, the question is, how does that aid then get into Gaza? Only a dozen trucks went into Gaza yesterday, and the foreign minister, Catherine Colonna, was on French radio this morning saying, in fact, you need to have hundreds of trucks going in every day in order to sustain, have any kind of a durability about sustaining the people in Gaza for their humanitarian needs. And of course, one of the big problems, she said, was this inspection that has to take place to make sure the trucks aren't loaded with contraband or with things that the Hamas could turn into weapons or use like fuel. So it is a process that's just nowhere near being very efficient and nowhere near as efficient as is needed in the situation, according to those who were there. And as you mentioned, President Macron was there last week, earlier this week actually, and in fact he visited all the leaders of the Palestinians, the Israelis, and Egyptians, and in fact came with this idea of some kind of a coalition to fight terrorism in the Middle East, the kind of coalition that came together for fighting ISIS, but there's absolutely no appetite that we can see that after that mission to put together something like that. So it's a real kind of a dead-end situation at the moment, and it looks like the Israelis are going to go ahead with their military invasion. Right?
Yeah, France is one of many of Israel's allies that are struggling with this idea of a ceasefire. Many people within the country wanting a ceasefire for humanitarian reasons as much as anything else, but Macron refusing to talk about a ceasefire, but instead a pause in the fighting. Just explain the dynamics within the country there on that.
Well, I think if you call for a ceasefire, it's almost saying you have to contradict what the Israelis have made it very clear they're not going to do, and that is to not have a ceasefire. They say they're not going to be restricted by any kind of international calls for a ceasefire. They're basically going to go ahead and do their military operation to get rid of Hamas once and for all, as they've already stated many, many times. So I think that if you say you're going to have a ceasefire, then you're kind of contradicting Israeli plans. And if you, on the other hand, say you want a humanitarian pause, maybe you can get enough humanitarian goods in to help support the Gazans. One of the things the French did too, and I should have mentioned this earlier, is that they sent out a ship. It's a helicopter carrier, but it does have a lot of hospital equipment on it. It has 60 hospital beds, as well as landing craft and other things. And if there was ever to be an evacuation, the French say they've got about 170 people in Gaza they'd like to get out. That includes 50 French citizens. If they ever were going to do an evacuation, this ship would be ideally suited to do that because it has landing craft and other kinds of things. But at the moment, everything is at loggerheads. There's no sign of any movement on any one of the fronts.
Okay, Jim Bisman, Azo, thanks for joining us from Paris. An Al Jazeera journalist has returned to work less than 24 hours after an Israeli airstrike killed his family in Gaza, his network Al Jazeera said. The IDF says it was targeting Hamas infrastructure in the area where the man's family was sheltering. CNN's Salma Abdelaziz has more, and a warning that parts of her report are graphic.
A journalist, some called the voice of Gaza, mourns over the body of his teenage son. They're taking their revenge by killing our children, he cries. Al Jazeera says its bureau chief in Gaza, Wael al-Dahdour, lost his wife, 15-year-old son, 7-year-old daughter, and baby grandson. All killed in an Israeli airstrike, the network says. The reporter had moved his family south of Gaza City after an evacuation order by the IDF, believing it would keep them safe. This conflict is taking a severe toll on journalists, with at least 24 killed so far, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. Reporters are also facing threats, arrests, and censorship. No one and nowhere in this enclave is spared, Palestinians say. Death and funerals are constant. Anguish and agony are on every corner. Every 10 minutes, a child is killed, Save the Children estimates. Anywhere else in the world, it is sons who bury their father, this man says. Why is it different in Gaza? Why do we have to bury our children before they're even grown? Families, desperate to keep their little ones safe, are taking refuge anywhere they can find. Packed UN shelters are turning people away. We can't live like this. We're 17 people living in a school classroom, this woman says. How long are we supposed to live like this? Tell us, world, how long? Eking out a living here is difficult and grim. Food, fuel, water, everything is running out. I don't even know what the point is of being here, she says. We're still terrified and we have nothing, no help. We can bear it. We're grown-ups. But how are these children supposed to handle this? There is no childhood left here for the more than 1 million kids now trapped in this hellscape. And no way, Gazans say, to keep the youngest safe. Samat Aziz, CNN, London.
If you'd like information on how to help with humanitarian relief efforts in Gaza and Israel, please go to cnn.com/impact. You'll find a list of vetted organisations providing assistance. That's at cnn.com/impact. Well, still to come, Hurricane Otis kills more than 24 people after barreling into Mexico's west coast. How it intensified from a tropical storm to a powerful Category 5 in just 12 hours.
The new CNN Prime Time is where the truth shines. The day's biggest stories. The night's most essential reporting. This is the new CNN Prime Time. Weeknights starting at 7 on CNN.
Bye-bye cough.
Later chest congestion. Hello 12 hours of relief.
12 hours? Not coughing? Hashtag still not coughing?
Mucin XDN gives you 12 hours of relief from chest congestion and any type of cough, day or night. Mucin XDN. It's comeback season.
Attention, Medicare has expanded Dexcom coverage for people with diabetes.
If you have diabetes, getting on Dexcom G7 is the single most important thing you can do. It eliminates painful finger sticks, helps lower A1C, and is covered by Medicare.
Before using the Dexcom G7, I was really frustrated. My A1C was stuck.
Dexcom G7 sends your glucose numbers to your phone or Dexcom receiver without painful finger sticks. The arrow shows the direction your glucose is heading, up, down, or steady. And because Dexcom G7 is the most accurate CGM, you can make better decisions about food, medication, and activity in the moment.
After using the Dexcom G7, my A1C has never been lower. I be line dancing 3 times a week, and I'm just living a great life now.
It's so easy to use. Dexcom G7 has given me confidence and control that everything I need is right there on my phone.
Now millions more are covered by Medicare. Take advantage of the expanded coverage by calling today.
Meet Gold Bond Daily Healing, a powerhouse lotion that moisturizes, heals, and smooths dry skin with 7 moisturizers and 3 vitamins. And new Gold Bond Healing Sensitive, clinically shown to heal and moisturize dry, sensitive skin. Gold Bond.
Lactate is 100% real milk, just without the lactose. Delicious, too. Just ask my old friend Kevin.
Nothing like enjoying a cold one while watching the game. Who's winning?
We are, my friend. We are.
Guys, got hair loss? I know what you're thinking. Should I shave my head? Comb it over? Wear a hat? Just stop. This isn't 1970. Keep your hair and your confidence because Bosley, America's #1 hair restoration experts, can give you your real hair back permanently. Check them out because they're giving away an absolutely free information kit and a free gift card to everyone who scans this QR code. Dude, you don't have to look like your dad because this isn't your dad's hair loss treatment. People all over the country trust Bosley because they're ahead of the curve. They use the latest technology to give you your real hair back. And the best part, Bosley's permanent solution is protected by the Bosley Guarantee. Let them show you for free how awesome your hair could look with an absolutely free information kit and a gift card for $250 off. Scan the QR code. Don't wait. Scan the code now and ask about the Bosley Guarantee.
The US Secretary of State and China's top diplomat are meeting in Washington as concerns continue to grow over the Israel-Hamas war expanding. Antony Blinken said he's looking forward to having, quote, constructive conversations with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi over his 3-day visit. In a statement just released, the State Department says that during their meeting on Thursday, Blinken reiterated the US will continue to stand up for our values and interests and those of our allies and partners. Wang will also meet with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. The Chinese foreign minister is set to speak with President Joe Biden during his trip as well. CNN's Beijing bureau chief Stephen Jiang is live for us in the Chinese capital. Stephen, so, what are you looking out for in this trip? Because there's so much that these two countries have in terms of tension, but also a lot of common ground.
Yeah, Max, the list is long, but the bar is low, and we haven't learned much from either side, actually, about what Wang Yi and Blinken talked about in detail, but the key takeaway here is it's now increasingly likely that Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader, is going to be in the U.S. next month to attend the APEC summit and also meeting with President Biden, because Wang Yi's visit to D.C. is very much seen as time to hash out the final details to pave the way for the Chinese leader to go to San Francisco next month. Now, the reason this is happening right now, I think, both international and domestic. Internationally, there is expectation that the two superpowers need to put a floor on this free fall in their relationship, because, especially as mentioned, with global conflicts intensifying and expanding, they really need to work together on a lot of these things, and especially when it comes to Gaza at the United Nations. But domestically, of course, Xi Jinping is still facing strong economic headwinds, and also, of course, China's relations, not just with the U.S., but with many other Western nations and even many of its neighbors, very strained. So he needs to show this domestic audience here that he is capable of managing and recalibrating relations with other countries, especially with Washington. But all of that, though, Max, analysts say, could be just tactical move, because fundamentally the way China and Xi Jinping views the U.S. has really not changed. It's very much about the U.S. is out to contain China's rise and suppress China's interests. That's why he is still very much determined to reshape this U.S.-led world order. Max?
Now, we've also had the news of the death of the former premier, Li Keqiang, so that's obviously making all the headlines there at the moment.
That's right, Li's death, the news came as a shock for many people as they woke up Friday morning, because he was only 68 years old and retired from his post as premier only in March. He was actually seen not long ago touring the provinces, and videos of him appearing on Chinese social media, and he appeared to be quite healthy and energetic. So this was really, I think, catching a lot of people off guard, maybe even the authorities, because even 8 hours after the announcement, we still have not seen an official obituary. But of course, they're having a lot of reactions and emotions online, but the comments very much closely monitored and strictly censored. But the one thing that seemed to emerge is, even though the legacy of Li Keqiang is still very much discussed and debated, people are comparing, contrasting him, a very much known reform-minded technocrat, to the current top leader, the strongman leader Xi Jinping, under whom Li Keqiang, of course, served for 10 years, but only saw his power increasingly weakened and sidelined, even when it comes to the economic portfolio, which he was supposed to be in charge. But Max, a lot of people associate Li's exit from power with that dramatic moment when his patron, former leader Hu Jintao, was unceremoniously let out of the party congress last year, as a stony-faced Li sitting there really with no emotion. Max, I think that is really the symbol of today's Chinese politics. Nobody is indispensable in Xi Jinping's China. Max?
Absolutely. Stephen Jiang in Beijing, thank you. Now, recovery efforts are underway after Hurricane Otis, slammed into Acapulco as a powerful Category 5 storm, killing more than 24 people.
As loved members of our family, we want our cats to be happy. But when they spray outside the litter box, fight with other house cats, or scratch the furniture, they could be telling you they're stressed. To help them feel more calm, plug in Feel Away Optimum. The relaxing pheromones of Feel Away Optimum help your cat feel more comfortable and secure at home. Feel Away Optimum, enhanced calming for cats, from the #1 vet-recommended brand for feline calming. Available at pet stores or ask your vet.
How do I do it all? With a little help. And to support my family's immune health, I choose Airborne. It has an unbeatable amount of vitamin C, plus a unique blend of immune-focused ingredients to turn up our immune support. Airborne, turn up your immune support.
Feeling sluggish or weighed down could be a sign that your digestive system isn't at its best. Metamucil gummies make it easy to get the fiber you need, promoting your digestive health for a better you. Metamucil gummies, the easy way to get your daily fiber.
Airwick's limited edition fragrances are infused with natural essential oils for authentic seasonal scents that fill your home with warmth and cheer.
Hi, it's Christina again. I'm here to tell you about an all-new special offer from my friends at Jacuzzi Bath Remodel that you don't want to miss. You already know, Jacuzzi has been making water feel great for more than 65 years. And now, they're bringing you this special TV offer. We're waiving all installation costs and postponing all payments for 1 year. Jacuzzi Bath Remodel has a design you'll love at at a price you can afford. And best of all, they can install it in as little as 1 day with no stress and no mess. Are you ready to see your new shower? Here it is.
It's fabulous! Taking a shower had gone from being a joy to being a burden. I was afraid I would fall. I called, and just 1 day, I had a shower I could feel safe in.
No matter your situation, Jacuzzi Bath Remodel has a solution for you. From a safer, easy entry shower with features like grab bars and a custom seat to keep you feeling comfortable and independent at home, to a stunning family bath, or how about a luxurious upgrade with a timeless design that will look great for years to come. Plus, they're built to last with a lifetime warranty from an iconic brand you know you can trust.
It was done the same day. We did not have to wait.
It's absolutely perfect. It's exactly what I was dreaming of.
If you haven't already experienced what Jacuzzi Bath Remodel can do for you, your family, and your home, don't wait any longer. Now is the best time to call. It's never been easier. Take advantage of this special TV offer today.
Go to jacuzzibathremodel.com or call 800-321-0299. That's 800-321-0299. Call now.
Dry skin is sensitive skin too, and it's natural. Treat it that way. Aveeno Daily Moisture with prebiotic oat is proven to moisturize dry skin all day. You'll love our formula for face too. Aveeno.
Closed captioning brought to you by InventHelp. Call 1-800-710-0020.
Do you have an invention idea but don't know what to do next? Call InventHelp today. They can help you get started with your idea.
Call now. 800-710-0020.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he can see the end of the war in his country. This comes after new American and Danish defense support measures were announced on Thursday. US Secretary of State says his country's security assistance package includes $150 million worth of arms and equipment. President Zelensky says Denmark's offering is over $500 million worth of tanks, drones and ammunition. Now, recovery efforts are underway in Acapulco, Mexico, after Hurricane Otis caused extensive damage. Power is slowly being restored, but operations at the airport are still suspended, and crews are working to clear debris from a landslide on a highway leading into the city. CNN's Gustavo Valdez reports.
This is typically what people come to Acapulco for, the nice beach, the nice surf. But right now it doesn't take long to see what happened after Otis came by. You see all the debris. It's plants, it's palm trees, it's metal, it's brick. This is the front of those fancy hotels where people spend hundreds of dollars to come and enjoy some time off. It's completely ruined. Not only the front, look up. Look at what happened to this building. You cannot even see any proof that anybody could have been living there. We have reports that people were actually in these buildings when the hurricane came, but you can see the danger they were in because of the damage that buildings like this have suffered after Otis. And this is something that we see not only on these nice, expensive areas, the resort areas, the more poor parts of the city are also suffering. The people are telling us they're not getting help, they're not getting water, they're not getting food. We saw looting in some streets, in some stores, people were coming out. In most cases, they were just taking food, water, something to drink. There were some that took advantage of the situation and they walked away with big screen TVs, but mostly people were telling us they just needed something to get by.
Well, that does it for me. Thank you for watching CNN Newsroom. I'm Max Foster in London. Early Start with Casey is up next.
Introducing Finish Ultimate, engineered for the toughest conditions. Dry burnt-on stains, old dishwashers, very hard water. New Finish Ultimate with Cyclosync technology helps deliver the ultimate clean.
He was only 47. Aneurysm. Did he have life insurance? Do you? No. You gotta get on it. Check out SelectQuote. Trust me, the peace of mind, it's worth it.
Come on, Dad. Life insurance is too important to put off another day. That's why SelectQuote makes getting coverage you need easy for less than $1 a day. Now get up to a $2 million policy with no medical exam and same-day coverage.
Visit SelectQuote.com. We shop, you save.
Attention, Medicare has expanded Dexcom coverage for people with diabetes.
If you have diabetes, getting on Dexcom G7 is the single most important thing you can do. It eliminates painful finger sticks, helps lower A1C, and is covered by Medicare.
Before using the Dexcom G7, I was really frustrated. My A1C was stuck.
Dexcom G7 sends your glucose numbers to your phone or Dexcom receiver without painful finger sticks. The arrow shows the direction your glucose is heading, up, down, or steady. And because Dexcom G7 is the most accurate CGM, you can make better decisions about food, medication, and activity in the moment.
After using the Dexcom G7, my A1C has never been lower. I be line dancing 3 times a week, and I'm just living a great life now.
It's so easy to use. Dexcom G7 has given me confidence and control that everything I need is right there on my phone.
Now millions more are covered by Medicare. Take advantage of the expanded coverage by calling today.
Even the most chillin' parents know when it's time to go into protect mode. Nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray.
One whole story, one whole hour. World's best journalists dig deeper.
The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper, Sunday at 10 on CNN.
We're both grateful and humbled by the generosity of the ALS Society of BC and the provincial government who provided the resources to allow UBC to recruit someone with the international stature of Professor Pioro.
I'm honored to take the lead for Project Hope. We will work diligently to create opportunities for persons living with ALS to have access to clinical trials. Our goal for ALS research at UBC is to become a leader.
On behalf of people living with ALS in BC, thank you.
Join me on my perfect feel-good vacation adventure in Penticton, BC.
Well, that might leave a mark.
And I did it all fuel-free. Almost. Wow, this is gorgeous.
I'm Warren Lieberman at the Pentagon, and this is CNN.
Good morning to our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Casey Hunt. It's Friday, October 27th. It is 5 a.m. in Lewiston, Maine, where more than 350 law enforcement personnel are engaged in an urgent manhunt for the suspect in a mass shooting at a bowling alley and a restaurant that left 18 people dead. Police say 40-year-old Robert Card, quote, should be considered armed and dangerous. Parts of 2 counties in central Maine are under shelter-in-place orders again today. Schools and offices also closed.
We've had everything from people calling about, noises in the basement, noises in the woods, suspicious people, gunshots, all night long since the incident in Lewiston. We have our whole department working. I encourage everybody to call if they see something suspicious.
The suspect's family is urging him to surrender. His brother tells CNN the family is cooperating with law enforcement in any way possible. Officers found the suspect's vehicle abandoned at a boat launch in Lisbon, Maine. Public records show he owns a small powerboat. An acquaintance in the Army Reserves calls Robert Card a skilled marksman, one of the best shooters in his unit. Law enforcement sources tell CNN Card recently spoke about hearing voices and had threatened to shoot up a National Guard facility. CNN's Mark Morales is live on the ground in Lewiston, Maine. Mark, good morning to you. Bring us up to speed. What is the latest on the manhunt?
Good morning, Casey. So here we are on Friday, and here's where we are right now. So after seeing armored vehicles drive through town, after seeing clusters of police officers, in some cases going door to door checking on leads, we still don't have a suspect in custody. And two things are happening at once. So on one side, you have a community that's completely torn apart by this. They're really feeling this heartbreak. And on the other, you have fear, this palpable fear that's affecting everybody. And the more and the longer that this man is not brought into custody, the more that fear grows. Now, that brings us to the latest strategy that's been done by law enforcement. They've decided to zero in on his home addresses, wherever he was listed as living previously. They've been going to these places. They've been executing search warrants. They're calling it their due diligence. Only a few short hours ago, they descended upon his last known address in Bowdoin. You saw heavily armed police officers. They had bullhorns. They had drones. After a few hours, it was given the all clear. But you saw this large police presence going in, doing what they called their due diligence to look for any evidence, anything that could have giving them any more clues as to what was going on. That search, or those types of searches, are expected to continue. There's one more location that they're going to hit. That's going to happen at some point later today. And that brings us to their searches and the way that they've been searching. So it's been more like a localized search. So they've been following tips and following leads and going to the particular streets and closing off all the surrounding streets, doing their searches, checking out what they needed to check out, and then they open up those streets. That's a little different from something that we've seen in, say, Watertown during the Boston Marathon bombing, where they would close down certain streets, and as time started to tick by, you started seeing more and more street closures. So they're doing this more of these localized searches with police going down and going and checking on these leads. And all this comes after we got a briefing yesterday from local leaders where they were telling us, and they gave us finally those numbers of 18 dead and 13 wounded. And although they did not give us a motive, the working theory that law enforcement is working through right now is that the gunman broke up with his girlfriend, that he targeted these locations because he used to go to these bars and he used to go to this bowling alley. Casey?
All right, Mark Morales for us in Lewiston, Maine. Thank you very much for that report. Coming up here, the suspected gunman reported hearing voices and threatened to shoot up a National Guard base, according to Maine law enforcement officials. So why wasn't he disarmed? We'll walk you through the laws. Plus, a congressman and Marine Corps veteran who lives in Lewiston is now changing his stance on assault weapons. And new overnight, the U.S. says it carried out airstrikes in Syria as tensions continue to rise in the region.
From e-commerce to new retail, Indonesia is having a tech boom.
Top-selling SKU is called Memory of My Ex-Girlfriend.
Edward is running a rising grab-and-go coffee brand with more than 900 stores across Indonesia and Malaysia, and over 5,000 employees.
You know, that joke actually becomes a $1 billion joke.
Indonesians are among the world's biggest coffee lovers, but the country lacks its own global coffee brand.
Our ambition is to become a global coffee company representing, high-quality Indonesian coffee to the world.
To supplement his local team, Edward turned to a chief technology officer 5,000 kilometers away.
You will get everything ready, at least for the company.
我们团队分在2个国家，技术研发和测试主要是在中国，产品设计 BI 和 IT 设施在印尼。中国很多的那个事情都是说过去发生的，印尼现在正在发生。
Using the best experience of both countries, Edward is steadily expanding his local team. Indonesia currently ranks 5th in the world in terms of new startups.
Yeah, very love my job. Yeah, have a chance to learn the new things like machine learning and also the AI.
I just want to, maybe I want to build my own business here. What other country or what developed country have right now, Indonesia gonna have as well.
Nikki Haley's record on China
as Governor Haley rolled out the red carpet for Chinese companies.
They want to do business in South Carolina. Our home, your home.
She gave them millions in tax breaks, subsidies, free land. The Communist Party-owned high-tech company got 200 acres, 5 miles from an army base.
I think China is really in good faith doing quite a bit. They are a really great friend of ours.
Nikki Haley, questionable judgment, dangerous from China. Never back down is responsible for the content of this advertising.
At Doctors Without Borders, we put patients first. We treat people free of charge and without regard to race, religion, or politics. Doctors Without Borders will continue to provide life-saving medical care wherever we're needed most.
I've always been prone to hair thinning. I'm genetically predisposed.
I just gave birth. I was under a lot of stress.
I started taking Nutrafol.
We test our formulations with the highest rigor of clinical trials, and we're the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement.
I noticed it becoming
stronger and thicker.
Nutrafol has taken me back to the hair I was meant to have.
I am back to me.
Start your hair growth journey at Nutrafol.com.
If your moderate to severe Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms are stopping you in your tracks, choose Stelara from the start and move toward relief after the first dose, with injections every 2 months.
Stelara may increase your risk of infections, some serious, and cancer. Before treatment, get tested for TB. Tell your doctor if you've had an infection, flu-like symptoms, sores, new skin growths, have had cancer, or if you need a vaccine. PRES, a rare potentially fatal brain condition, may be possible. Some serious allergic reactions and lung inflammation can occur.
Feel unstoppable. Ask your doctor how lasting remission can start with Stelara. Janssen can help you explore cost support options.
Okay, we're having some issues with KC's technical lines there, so I'm going to pick up from here, but we're really talking about this top story, the manhunt in Maine, of course. We're going to get the very latest for you now. We've got Jennifer Masher with us. Thank you so much. You can see we're having some technical problems, Jennifer, so thank you for helping us with that. In terms of the manhunt, obviously, I mean, the amount of concern that must be in this area is unimaginable. Just, Maine, isn't immune to shootings, of course, but it does have slightly laxer gun laws, as I understand it. And this sort of thing absolutely is not expected there. And now they have, literally, the worst situation of gun violence in America this year so far.
Maine has been very lucky. It is a state that has not seen these catastrophic public mass shootings. It also has a rich gun culture, hunting, and also very permissive gun laws. When you look at the rest of the Northeast, most of the states have licensing. Maine and a couple other states are the exceptions, and they have had very low gun homicide rates. There are usually only a couple of dozen murders in the state in an entire year, and this shooting, sadly, is almost that entire toll. But luck seems to be running out in Maine. I spoke with someone in Lewiston yesterday who said it's amazing it hasn't happened before now. We've been living under kind of a false sense of security. After all, we are part of America, and America has a gun violence problem.
Hi, Jennifer. This is Casey Hunt. Apologies there. I think we've resolved the tech problems that we were challenged with there. And can you help us explain a little bit of the difference between a yellow flag law and a red flag law, and why that matters here?
Absolutely. So 21 states have red flag laws, and they are emergency orders. They are designed to intervene before somebody can harm themselves or somebody else. Speed is of the essence with these mechanisms. The yellow flag law, no other state has a law like this. It was a bipartisan compromise, and it very much acts like that. It's not really an emergency order. Only a police officer can invoke this. In many other red flag states, a family member can go to a police officer with their concerns, and then they go to a judge. Here, a police officer will take the patient into custody. A doctor has to sign off, then they go to a judge. And this process takes a lot longer than a red flag law. And there's a lot of room in there for somebody to lash out violently. And I think lawmakers and residents in Maine today are wondering if these yellow flag laws are enough, if they shouldn't just pass a full-on red flag emergency risk protection order law.
Jennifer, I want to show you what Maine's congressman who represents Lewiston, he actually is from Lewiston himself. He has in the past opposed proposals to ban assault weapons after the shooting. Here's what he had to say about his position on that.
I have opposed efforts to ban deadly weapons of war like the assault rifle used to carry out this crime. The time has now come for me to take responsibility for this failure, which is why I now call on the United States Congress to ban assault rifles like the one used by the sick perpetrator of this mass killing.
And even the state's Republican Senator Susan Collins suggesting that the large magazines were a significant problem. Congress has been unable to ban those in recent years as well. I mean, this is a remarkable shift for him. The reality in the past in Maine has been that they've had fewer mass shootings than other neighboring states. This obviously changed the congressman's mind.
It did. I mean, these weapons do incredible damage, and especially because they can fire off so many lethal rounds so quickly. It can kill dozens of people in a matter of minutes. But an assault weapon ban might have not actually helped in this case. This is an Army reservist who was a firearms instructor. There's an argument out there that what's needed, really, are laws that allow police to intervene when somebody shouldn't be armed. The bar needs to be lower than an involuntary mental health commitment. Focusing on certain categories of weapons doesn't focus on the vetting of the buyer. It's really not the weapon, it's who we're giving these weapons to.
All right, Jennifer Mascia of The Trace, thank you very much for being with us this morning. I really appreciate your time today.
You bet.
And up next here, aid continuing to arrive in Gaza, but none of it is the fuel they say they so desperately need. How that is worsening the unprecedented humanitarian crisis there next. And what President Biden said that prompted the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health to publish the names of thousands of people killed in Gaza.
The new CNN Prime Time is where the truth shines. The day's biggest stories. The night's most essential reporting. This is the new CNN Prime Time. Weeknights starting at 7 on CNN.
Pain hits fast, so get relief fast. Only Tylenol Rapid Release Gels have laser-drilled holes. They release medicine fast for fast pain relief. And now, get max strength topical pain relief precisely where you need it with new Tylenol Precise.
Attention hearing loss sufferers. Do you struggle hearing loved ones? Do you have trouble keeping up with conversations? Do you listen to TV on max volume? Hearing loss affects your life. You miss out on important moments. You feel alone. Start hearing better today with RCA's all-new advanced hearing aids. These aren't cheap amplifiers that don't really work, and you'll never have to pay thousands again. The FDA now allows us to bring true high-quality hearing aids direct to you. Through RCA's Hearing America program, you can get your choice of 2 state-of-the-art ultra-discreet hearing aids listed at $11.99 now for a special introductory price, or pay as little as only $29 a month with free shipping.
They're affordable. They're not the cost that people associate with hearing aids.
My old-fashioned ones cost me $5,000, and these actually work better.
Engineered with advanced technology, the RCAs are rechargeable and have easy-to-use volume controls built right in. And unlike so many others, with the push of a button, these hearing aids give you presets for better hearing in a quiet setting, loud restaurants, or listening to music. You can adjust them to help you hear the best wherever you are. There are no tools required and no batteries to fumble with.
When I first popped them in, I went, wow,
I hear everything.
Simply slip in your RCA hearing aids and instantly hear your world again.
Grandpa, I love you.
Never miss a moment again.
You know RCA. The quality's there.
You cleared up decades of frustration in a second.
Order now, and we'll ship your pair of FDA-registered hearing aids in your choice of style with incredible savings. Pay as low as only $29 a month. You get a 45-day money-back guarantee, free 24/7 U.S.-based support, a portable charging case, and free shipping. With RCA, you can be hearing better in just days. Order yours now.
Call 800-641-1163 or visit rcahearingaids.com. That's 800-641-1163.
Why is just a starting line? For the true self blooms only when we find our purpose,
what makes us tick below the surface. Our reason why is united, undivided, seeking understanding. My why is diversity and unity, a safe space in my community. It's a million faces in a mirror, and everyone belongs. Find your why for a better us.
My store, my design business, were exploding, but my old internet was not letting me run the show. So we switched to Verizon Business Internet. They have business-grade internet nationwide.
Make the switch. It's your business. It's your Verizon.
I was shocked that I had cancer because there isn't cancer in my family.
I didn't know you could die from skin cancer. And then I go in 2 weeks later to get my diagnosis of melanoma.
Melanoma is the deadliest form of skin cancer.
Protect yourself by being sun safe. Check yourself with monthly skin exams. Inform yourself. Skin cancer is real. Learn more at saveyourskin.ca.
They put food on our tables, care for our loved ones, and help build our communities. Canada needs over 400,000 migrant workers to fill employment gaps and sustain our growing economy. Mosaic BC's Migrant Workers Program provides support services to migrant workers, but more needs to be done. Like many others, migrant workers also lost their jobs during the BC wildfires. Emergency funding is required to support worker needs. Help give back to these workers who give so much to Canada. Donate today at mosaicbc.org.
I'm Manu Raja on Capitol Hill, and this is CNN.
Welcome back. The UN says the humanitarian crisis in Gaza has reached an unprecedented point as more aid trucks enter carrying water, food, medicine, and medical supplies, but no fuel. Now, hospitals are shutting down with fuel severely rationed to run select critical facilities. Israel is blocking deliveries of fuel altogether, arguing that Hamas would just divert it for military use. CNN's Nada Bashir is live in Amman, Jordan. Nada, is there anything that could break this stalemate over the fuel?
Well, look, Casey, Israel has been very clear in its position on this. They say they will not allow fuel to get into Gaza because they claim that it is being used by Hamas. We heard earlier in the week from an Israeli advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who said Israel does not intend to fuel, in his words, the Hamas military machine. Of course, we have heard some mixed messages. Earlier in the week, we also heard from IDF spokespeople who suggested that we could begin to see fuel coming in off the basis that this would be guaranteed to be heading towards humanitarian efforts and operations there. But clearly, this is not what we are seeing now. We've heard the repeated warnings now from the UN, from other aid agencies, as well as from hospitals and doctors on the ground who are telling us that this shortage in fuel is crippling the humanitarian situation inside the Gaza Strip. Hospitals are being forced to shut down in some areas. There are warnings that we could begin to see hospitals running out of electricity, babies on incubators, of course facing a dire situation, many people in desperate need of that fuel. But of course, it's not just fuel. We are beginning to see aid coming in, but it is a drop in the ocean compared to what is actually needed. We're hearing from people on the ground in Gaza who are telling us that they are rationing their food supplies. They don't have any food in some cases. There is no electricity, no safe water, and of course fuel being crucial there for the processing, filtration of safe drinking water, and that is a huge concern. We've heard from EU officials calling for a pause in the fighting, in the airstrikes, to allow for humanitarian aid to come in. Not, of course, a full ceasefire in the words of the EU, but rather a humanitarian pause. But look, there is repeated warnings coming from here in the region, calling for an end to the airstrikes and end to Israel's war on the Gaza Strip. We've seen that mounting death toll, of course, now topping 7,000 according to the health ministry inside Gaza. They published a list yesterday, thousands and thousands of names, thousands and thousands of children killed in these airstrikes. And look, we're here today outside Friday Prayers in downtown Amman. You can see hundreds of people lining the streets to pray here, many of them wearing the Palestinian scarf in solidarity with the Palestinian people. And we are expecting further rallies later today.
All right, Nada Bashir for us in Amman, Jordan, thank you very much. And as Nada mentioned, there is that new report from the Hamas-controlled health ministry. It lists the names of more than 7,000 people they say are documented deaths since October 7th, which it blames on Israeli military aggression. The list is a response to President Biden saying he has no confidence in the casualty numbers being reported by the Gazan Health Ministry. Let's bring back CNN's Max Foster. Max, thank you very much for jumping in there. We apologize for springing that on you, and I'm grateful to have you with us. But look, let's talk about this death toll controversy, basically, because at a press conference, President Biden was asked about this on Wednesday, and he essentially said to the reporter who listed the death toll that he didn't believe what the death toll was. Now, the health ministry in Gaza has previously been a very reliable reporter of information like this, according to our teams who have spent many years kind of lining up what they have said with what's played out. Obviously, the situation on the ground much more chaotic, different here, but it is very dramatic to see that list that they published with the names, sometimes dozens from a single family.
Yeah, and it's very, very detailed, and they're making the point that these figures are reliable, the Hamas-controlled Palestinian Health Authority. They're actually saying that this is an underestimate because there are, it doesn't include bodies, for example, that haven't gone into the hospital yet, for example. So they're saying it's an underestimate. I don't think Joe Biden's sort of questioning that people have died in Gaza. It's just the number of people who have died and whether or not we can rely on these figures that the US can't verify, like we can't verify them. They are coming from this Hamas-controlled body. So, but they are figures that we've relied on in the past, and the State Department has also relied on them in the past and quoted them as well. And it's this lack of information that we're getting. We're not being able to verify all the information. The US can't verify the information like many other nations. So there's a big debate about those figures coming out from this Palestinian Health Authority, which is run by Hamas right now, which is obviously regarded as a terror organization. So it's a very difficult situation, but it's the one source of figures that people have been quoting, and President Biden, I think, is speaking for quite a lot of people that in saying that, questioning how much we can rely on the exact figures at least.
And of course, the United Nations is using these figures as well, and they periodically put out, statements, and they have talked about the urgent need for humanitarian aid. Of course, the challenge there that the United Nations, the Israelis have called their credibility into question. They don't trust the way that the United Nations operates in this plane.
Indeed, and we've got this meeting, haven't we, at the United Nations, and they're discussing a ceasefire, which is a motion brought forward by the Arab states. This is a huge, huge debate around the world. I was just talking to Jim Bitterman in Paris about this today. All of the Israeli allies have effectively, obviously, backed up Israel's right to defend itself against Hamas. They can't then be seen to call for a ceasefire because that would undermine that message. So they're trying to find a way around the language. So France, the UK, for example, the US, now calling for a lull or a pause in the violence. But, getting a ceasefire through the UN is going to be really difficult indeed.
For sure. All right, Max Foster, thank you very much for being with us this morning. I really appreciate it. Don't go far, just in case. Thank you. All right, coming up here, a former colleague says the suspect in the Maine mass shooting is a skilled marksman and outdoorsman who was among the best shooters in his Army Reserve unit. How that impacts the ongoing manhunt.
I have moderate to severe Crohn's disease. Now there's Skyrizi. Things are looking up. I've got symptom relief. Control of my Crohn's means everything to me. Control is everything to me. Feel significant symptom relief at 4 weeks with Skyrizi, including less abdominal pain and fewer bowel movements. Skyrizi is the first IL-23 inhibitor that can deliver remission and visibly improve damage of the intestinal lining. And the majority of people experience long-lasting remission at 1 year. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, had a vaccine, or plan to. Liver problems may occur in Crohn's disease. Now's the time to ask your gastroenterologist how you can take control of your Crohn's with Skyrizi. Control is everything to me. Learn how AbbVie could help you save.
I've always been prone to hair thinning. I'm genetically predisposed.
I just gave birth. I was under a lot of stress.
I started taking Nutrafol.
We test our formulations with the highest rigor of clinical trials, and we're the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement.
I noticed it becoming
Stronger and thicker.
Nutrafol has taken me back to the hair I was meant to have.
I am back to me.
Start your hair growth journey at Nutrafol.com.
When moderate to severe ulcerative colitis takes you off course, put it in check with Rinvoq, a once-daily pill.
When I wanted to see results fast, Rinvoq delivered rapid symptom relief and helped leave bathroom urgency behind. Check.
When UC tried to slow me down, I got lasting steroid-free remission with Rinvoq. Check.
And when UC caused damage, Rinvoq came through by visibly repairing my colon lining. Check. Rapid symptom relief, lasting steroid-free remission.
And a chance to visibly repair the colon lining. Check, check, and check.
Rinvoq can lower your ability to fight infections including TB, serious infections and blood clots, some fatal, cancers including lymphoma and skin cancer, death, heart attack, stroke, and tears in the stomach or intestines occurred. People 50 and older with at least one heart disease risk factor have higher risks. Don't take if allergic to Rinvoq, as serious reactions can occur. Tell your doctor if you are or may become pregnant.
Put UC in check and keep it there with Rinvoq.
Ask your gastroenterologist about Rinvoq and learn how AbbVie can help you save.
Icy hot. Ice works fast. Heat makes it last. Feel the power of contrast therapy. So you can rise from pain. Icy hot.
I told myself I was okay with my moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis symptoms.
With my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. But just okay isn't okay.
And I was done settling.
If you still have symptoms after a TNF blocker like Humira or Enbrel, Rinvoq is different and may help. Rinvoq is a once-daily pill that can dramatically relieve RA and PSA symptoms, including fatigue for some. It can stop joint damage, and in PSA, can leave skin clear or almost clear.
Rinvoq can lower your ability to fight infections, including TB, serious infections and blood clots, some fatal, cancers including lymphoma and skin cancer, death, heart attack, stroke, and tears in the stomach or intestines occurred. People 50 and older with at least one heart disease risk factor have higher risks. Don't take if allergic to Rinvoq, as serious reactions can occur. Tell your doctor if you are or may become pregnant.
Done settling?
Ask your rheumatologist for Rinvoq.
And take back what's yours.
Learn how AbbVie could help you save.
Had enough?
No, arthritis.
Here, Aspercream arthritis.
Huh. Full prescription strength. Reduces inflammation. Thank the gods.
Don't thank them too soon.
Kick pain in the Aspercream.
Good morning. Thank you for being up early with us. It is just before 5:30 on the East Coast. I'm Casey Hunt. The big story we have been following, a massive manhunt expanding this morning for the suspect in a mass shooting that killed 18 people and injured 13 others at the bowling alley and restaurant in Lewiston, Maine. Police say 40-year-old Robert Card should be considered armed and dangerous. With the suspect still at large for a second day, parts of 2 counties remain under shelter-in-place orders. Schools and offices also closed. An Army reservist who served with Card says he's a skilled marksman, one of the best shooters in his unit. And law enforcement sources say Card recently started showing psychiatric symptoms, speaking of hearing voices and threatening to shoot up a National Guard facility. We are now going to bring in Chris Swecker, the former FBI Assistant Director for the Criminal Investigative Division. Chris, thank you very much for being with us this morning. I want to talk a little bit about the search for this man and what happened overnight, because we saw last night law enforcement assets basically surrounded the gunman's home, the fields. There were people shouting. It seemed to be that he was possibly in the house. That did not turn out to be the case. They are also now tracking a boat that was registered to him, searching in the river. What does this, full day 2 of this manhunt look like?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a search warrant actually executed at the compound, house or houses at the compound. That's what they went there for, that law enforcement did yesterday. And of course, that place has been under surveillance since they learned the identity of the shooter. So I think they've been watching the house all day and hoping that he would show up. And at some point they decided to just go in, and that's when they threw the flashbangs. Those are anti-personnel mini grenades, just designed to stun people in the house and give the entry team time to take them out if they have to. So they intended to either arrest him or serve the search warrant. Something happened that spooked them. They backed out. They even left and came back. So based on a report by a neighbor, and I think when they realized that that he wasn't coming out if he was in there, or they had he just wasn't in there, they decided to back off for the night. There's no point trying to execute the search warrant, do an entry in the middle of the night. So that's where we are. They've been holding their positions all night. Meanwhile, I think there's a large group or people who think that he is in the woods somewhere. He was at the boat landing for a reason. He got into his boat and found a remote location, probably a pre-positioned location, and probably pre-supplied like the Olympic bomber did up in the North Carolina mountains. And he's hiding out. So those are two possibilities here. Well, actually, the second possibility is he had a switch car and he's hours and hours and hours away, and that would be I think the worst case scenario.
What is your sense of how long this could go on? Because I mean, this man obviously has extensive skills from his military training, not just around firearms, which we've talked about extensively, but also around living in tough environments for potentially long periods of time.
Yeah, I think like the Olympic bomber, he's fairly provincial. He's lived there all his life. He hunts in that area. He fishes in that area. He boats. He is as many people are in that part of Maine, an outdoorsman, and he has military training, of course, as well. So the educated guess here is that he is somewhere in those woods. The police and law enforcement will have to set up a perimeter around that general area, and that's the tough part right there. Where do you set up your perimeter? How large, how widespread should it be? And then it's going to be just a laborious task of trying to tighten down that perimeter until you find him, or he gets so cold or miserable and starving that he gives himself up. I don't take this guy as someone who's going to give himself up. I think it's not going to end well. So that's probably one of the most difficult law enforcement manhunts there is. It took us 5 years to find Eric Rudolph, and he never moved more than 8 miles from the original place where he was last seen. So he knows the area better than law enforcement. The only people that are really the most effective resource right now are fish and wildlife, game warden type law enforcement officers. They know the area.
Right. So 5 years you mentioned to try to find another person here. What does law enforcement do and think about this in the context of lifting these lockdowns? I mean, at what point, if they continue to not find him, at what point do they say to people, hey, you can go back to school?
Yeah, as the leads and intelligence come in, they may decide, well, he's not in this area anymore, or we've got him contained in the woods. But until then, I don't see them lifting that. I think they'll advise people, go for essential supplies and that sort of thing. If you're out of water, only for essential things, and they'll keep it going for a while. I mean, they don't know right now. I don't think they have a clue where he is. I think there's the educated guess is he's in the woods. However, if he got into a car, a switch car, he could be hundreds of miles away. So they're in for the long haul, and as long as he's at large, he's a killer. He's heavily armed. I think they're going to keep that, unless they have some information to the contrary that he's somewhere else. I think they're going to keep that lockdown going.
All right, and for potentially a long haul in Maine. Chris Swecker, former FBI Assistant Director, thank you very much for being with us this morning. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. Sure.
And we are going to go now to CNN's Mark Morales. He is live on the ground in Lewiston, Maine with the latest. Mark, people are still waking up under lockdown. Can you bring us up to speed with what we saw at the suspect's house late last night and into the morning, and also just tell us how are residents there feeling today?
Right, and as far as residents go, you have two things going on at once. You have them dealing with the heartbreak and this tragedy that really tore apart this community, and at the same time, fear. As you've mentioned, they're waking up today, still under lockdown. This is something that's affecting approximately 100,000 residents, and that fear is palpable. You can feel that from just talking to people in the community as they see armored trucks go through the neighborhoods, as they see police go door to door on their checks. That fear, it continues to rise. Now, just a few hours ago, we saw law enforcement descend on what's believed to be the most recent home of the shooter. This is what they're calling due diligence, and part of their latest strategy. They're executing search warrants. They're looking for any evidence that they can collect in these homes. Yesterday, we saw dozens of police officers. They had bullhorns, they had drones, they had their armored vehicles. After a few hours, they gave it the all clear. They're expected to do this again today and look at another property and execute a search warrant there. And that kind of leads us to how they're actually doing these searches. We've seen them yesterday as they were going through. It's very localized. They get a tip and they close down a street and they do their searches, and once that's done, they open it up and then traffic can flow through. Casey?
All right, CNN's Mark Morales in Lewiston, Maine for us. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your reporting. And coming up here, for the second night in a row, the IDF conducted targeted raids inside Gaza before withdrawing. And here at home, President Biden just got a Democratic challenger in the race for the White House. That's ahead.
The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper is appointment viewing on Sunday nights. One whole story, one whole hour. The world's best journalists dig deeper into the stories they can't ignore. The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper, Sunday at 10 on CNN.
Icy hot. Ice works fast. Heat makes it last. Feel the power of contrast therapy, so you can rise from pain. Icy hot.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Think Zenith. In today's fast-moving, fast-changing world, you need a financial partner that understands your unique expectations. A bank with presence in major financial centers across the world, with the enabling platform to facilitate seamlessly, whenever, wherever, however. A bank with best-in-class financial solutions from a superb combination of technology and human touch. For easy, fast, and secure banking that creates real value. Turning dreams into reality is now in your hands. People, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
Create a backyard that's out of this world. Right now, save $30 on the GTA 26 handheld battery pruner. Real steel. Find yours.
When you're ready to begin treatment for chronic lymphocytic leukemia, Calquence helps you do the fighting, and you can do the exploring. You can do the splashing, the sightseeing, and the playing. Calquence is an oral targeted therapy for CLL. More patients begin with Calquence than any treatment of its kind, and Calquence is proven to work better than chemoimmunotherapy in patients with previously untreated CLL. Calquence may cause serious side effects which may lead to death. These include serious infections with fever, chills, or flu-like symptoms, and bleeding problems that may increase with blood thinners. Decreased blood counts are common and can be severe. New cancers have happened, including skin cancers. Heart rhythm problems with fast or irregular heartbeat, dizziness, feeling faint, chest discomfort, or shortness of breath have happened. Tell your doctor if you have bleeding, heart rhythm or liver problems, infection, or if you are or plan to be pregnant or breastfeeding. Calquence helps you do the fighting, and you can focus on the things you're loving. Ask your doctor if Calquence is right for you.
Are you certain about the entertainment? You kind of nailed it. Are you for imprint certain?
Are you ready to rock?
I got this.
Certainty matters. For promotional products everyone will love delivered on time, visit 4imprint.com.
4imprint, for certain.
Wounded Warrior Project
26 mission is to honor and empower those who sacrifice so much for our country. Now you have the chance to take action and help put that mission in motion by signing up for the Carry Forward 5K, one of the most unique and powerful events you'll ever experience. Show your support in 3 special ways by carrying a flag, weight, or person. Don't miss your chance to put the mission in motion. Register for Carry Forward today.
I'm Erin Burnett in Tel Aviv, and this is CNN.
Welcome back. New overnight, the Israeli Defense Forces conducted targeted raids inside Gaza before withdrawing. This is the second time in 2 days that that's happened. Video published by the IDF shows moving tanks and armored vehicles, as well as strikes on buildings and in open areas. All this happening as tensions in the region escalate. The Pentagon says that the U.S. carried out airstrikes in Syria targeting 2 facilities linked to Iranian-backed militias. Defense officials say this was in retaliation for attacks against U.S. forces in the region over the last 10 days. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said the strikes were, quote, narrowly targeted in self-defense, emphasizing that they were separate from the war in Israel and Gaza. Austin also promised further strikes if the attacks by Iran on U.S. forces continue. Jim Sciutto is in the Golan Heights for us, and Kim Dozier, CNN Global Affairs analyst, also joins us. But Jim, of course, we want to go first to you on the scene there. Bring us up to speed on what happened with these strikes overnight and why the U.S. made this move.
Good morning, Casey. Standing here in the Golan, and you can see Syria behind me here. It's just a reminder that in the northern part of Israel, and when you get into the Golan, you have, in effect, 2 international borders that Israel is directing its attention at, certainly Lebanon, where Hezbollah is based, but also Syria, where you have Iranian-backed militias as well. And the significance of these U.S. strikes overnight is that it appears to be retaliation for strikes on U.S. forces by Iran-backed forces in both Syria and Iraq. But notably, this is a base that doesn't just have, at times, Iranian-backed militias. It has actual Iranian forces from the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, and it's not clear that the U.S. prior to these strikes was certain that there were no Iranian personnel there. In other words, a risk there that these U.S. strikes could have impacted Iranian forces on the ground. That shows the seriousness with which the U.S. is responding to strikes on its own forces in the region. I'll tell you where we are this morning. The border area looks calm, but there's certainly, like in the northern part of Israel near Lebanon, a large Israeli military presence. They are on alert. They are watching very closely.
Yeah, no, of course they are. Kim Dozier, let me bring you into this conversation. What message does this send to Iran?
To keep its proxies in check, that it could risk U.S. retaliation for any strikes that it makes, again, on U.S. forces. And this is important as Iranian proxies and Iranian-backed politicians inside Iraq have called for violence against the U.S., against U.S. facilities. Iran has these proxies and supporters in a number of locations where it can sort of like a lever turn up the aggravation, the violence against U.S. and other facilities. And Lloyd Austin is sending a message that the U.S. is moving forces into the region to take care of that, and that if it happens again, the U.S. will consider striking again.
Jim, what do we know about the nature of the injuries that were sustained by U.S. troops?
At this point, it does not appear to be life-threatening, but let's be clear, when you attack bases in this way, you could very easily kill U.S. forces, and of course, that could conceivably level up the U.S. response. We've seen deadly attacks by Iranian-backed forces, militias in the past on U.S. forces in the region, and that just shows what a tinderbox this region is right now. The chances of escalation, right, is that a small thing that perhaps, whether it's Iran or the U.S., intends to be limited to some degree, it's not clear that they can enforce those limits, right? If you drop enough rockets on a base, you might kill U.S. forces or contractors. If the U.S. drops enough bombs and strikes on an Iranian base inside Syria, you might very well kill Iranian forces. And that presents the danger then, of course, of further escalation. It's just another reminder that you have many fronts in this conflict right now and many players with real dangers of things moving beyond where any of the parties want it to move, right? And that's the nature of the alert right now.
Yeah, for sure. Kim, I'm wondering how tied together what's going on here with these strikes and what's playing out politically with the president. We heard him say on Wednesday that he had doubts about the death count in Gaza, and that has really caused public anger throughout the Middle East. Do you see any risk in the way the president addressed that that could connect to U.S. forces in the region, or am I making a bridge too far?
Look, the Pentagon said that these strikes against Iranian sites don't have anything to do with the Gaza conflict, but it's hard to see that. The U.S. is moving in a couple of carrier strike groups because of what's happening in Gaza, because of the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. And the U.S. is increasingly siding with Israel's point of view on things in that prior to this, the U.S., other international bodies had considered Palestinian health figures out of Gaza pretty reliable. But of course, the White House had an answer to this. They said, until this conflict, perhaps, but when the Al Ahli Baptist Hospital was attacked, the Palestinian Health Authority said within an hour of the attack that something like 500 people were killed, and the U.S. intelligence assessment was that it was more like 100 to 300. So that is part of their argument of saying that the Palestinian Health Authority has become a mouthpiece for Hamas, which of course the Palestinian Health Authority inside Gaza refuted by putting out a 200+ page list with the names of those that they say they tabulated as dead, not including bodies that haven't already been counted, as a previous correspondent was saying. So it's he said, she said, and basically at this point, President Biden is taking Israel's side.
All right, Kim Dozier, Jim Sciutto, thank you both very much for being here with us. I really appreciate having you in this hour. Jim, stay safe out there. And here in the United States, Minnesota Democratic Congressman Dean Phillips has announced a run for the White House, launching a primary challenge against President Biden. He spoke to CBS News about why he's getting into the race.
Are you running for president?
I am. I have to. I think President Biden has done a spectacular job for our country, but it's not about the past. This is an election about the future. I will not sit still. I will not be quiet in the face of numbers that are so clearly saying that we're going to be facing an emergency next November.
Wow. His campaign launch comes as Democrats are trying to unify around Biden and lay out the administration's accomplishments to voters. Phillips is expected to formally announce his campaign in New Hampshire at 11:30 a.m. this morning. Suffice to say, this is causing a lot of headaches in the White House right now. All right, up next, we are continuing to follow the urgent manhunt for the armed and dangerous gunman suspected of killing 18 people in Lewiston, Maine. We're going to be joined by a local radio host who is currently under lockdown, what his community is feeling as they're waking up this morning.
The new CNN Prime Time is where the truth shines. The day's biggest stories. The night's most essential reporting. This is the new CNN Prime Time. Weeknights starting at 7 on CNN.
Nikki Haley's record on China as Governor Haley rolled out the red carpet for Chinese companies.
They want to do business in South Carolina. Our home, your home.
She gave them millions in tax breaks, subsidies, free land. The Communist Party-owned high-tech company got 200 acres, 5 miles from an army base.
I think China is really in good faith doing quite a bit. They are a really great friend of ours.
Nikki Haley, questionable judgment, dangerous from China. Never back down is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Stars Play in Abu Dhabi is the region's leading streaming service that brings you the magic of films and the excitement of sports to your favorite device, be it television or your mobile phone. With a business like ours, we need a range of talent from technology as well as creative. We found Abu Dhabi to be our hub for accessing that type of talent.
Get iPhone 15 Pro with titanium from Boost Infinite and transcend to a wireless utopia where you'll experience unparalleled coverage on America's smart network and save up to 40% on your monthly bill. Infinitely better.
If your moderate to severe Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms are stopping you in your tracks, choose Stelara from the start and move toward relief after the first dose, with injections every 2 months.
Stelara may increase your risk of infections, some serious, and cancer. Before treatment, get tested for TB. Tell your doctor if you've had an infection, flu-like symptoms, sores, new skin growths, have had cancer, or if you need a vaccine. PRES, a rare potentially fatal brain condition, may be possible. Some serious allergic reactions and lung inflammation can occur.
Feel unstoppable. Ask your doctor how lasting remission can start with Stelara. Janssen can help you explore cost support options.
For 40 years, I'd been burying my emotions and all the trauma.
I was grasping desperately for independence and hope. I found it with a tail and a cold nose.
I call him my battle buddy, because every time we're out in the public, he has my back.
Every time those demons start talking, he knows, and he's right there at my side. The last thing truly did save my life.
Another month?
There are procedures. How they will come.
Oh, is that what I tell the investors?
Tell them we don't have to do this one country at a time. BDO says the approval process is similar throughout Latin America.
So parallel tracks.
If we have first-hand experience in each country.
And BDO can find these people.
BDO has these people.
People who know BDO. 1 in 3 children is now at risk of going to school on an empty stomach.
When I'm hungry, my stomach starts to hurt a little bit. It's hard to think and concentrate. I don't have enough energy.
But there's hope. By supporting Toonies for Tummies, 100% of your donation gives hungry children in your community the chance to start their day with a much-needed nutritious meal.
When I eat breakfast, I have lots of energy. When it's gym, I can run really fast.
Donate online today.
The Navy League of Canada is welcoming new cadets to join our youth program for 9 to 12-year-olds. Navy League cadets discover the thrill of the sea and the joy of lifelong friendships. Develop leadership skills, discipline, and resilience that will shape their future. Visit our website or call us today to learn about the exciting journey of Navy League cadets and the oceans of opportunities. Ask a parent before going online. The Navy League of Canada, empowering the leaders of tomorrow.
I'm Eva McKen in Washington, and this is CNN.
Closed captioning is brought to you by Audiobook Network. Authors tell your story. Produce an audiobook with us.
Want to earn more profits and find a new audience for your published book? Produce an audiobook. We handle narration, production, and digital distribution.
800-753-8559.
Welcome back. We're learning more about some of the 18 lives lost in the Lewiston mass shooting. Arthur Artie Strout was at Schmenge's Bar and Grill when he was killed. He leaves behind 5 children. Peyton Brewer Ross was also at Schmenge's playing in a cornhole tournament. He leaves behind a 2-year-old daughter, Elle. His brother says he loved being a dad more than anything. He was 39. Brian McFarland, who was a member of the deaf community, was also participating in that cornhole tournament. His sister says he was one of the first deaf people in the state of Vermont to get a commercial trucking license. McFarland loved riding his motorcycle and hanging out with his dog, M&M. 53-year-old Tricia Asselin worked part-time at the bowling alley. She was bowling that night with her sister, who was able to escape the shooting. She spoke with CNN's Jake Tapper.
Somebody came out and said that she called 911. And when she called 911 to save everybody, she lost her life because of it. And she was a great person.
34-year-old Tommy Conrad worked as a manager at the Just-in-Time Bowling Alley in Lewiston, Maine. He leaves behind a 9-year-old daughter. And Joseph Walker was the manager of Schmenge's Bar and Grill. His father says state police told him his son tried to stop the gunman with a knife.
My son actually
because he's manager of the bar and everything else, picked up a butcher knife and went after the gunman to try to stop him from killing other people. And that's when he shot my son to death, trying to save some more lives that he ended up losing his life. I'm a Christian. I go to church, I believe in the law, and I believe in Jesus Christ. But why do we have to go through these kind of miserable times? This has never happened in our two cities, never. It's the worst thing that's ever happened in these two cities.
So tough. Joining us now is Ken Altshuler, former morning radio talk show host and an attorney in Maine. Ken, thank you very much for being here as we remember these victims. You have lived in Maine for 40 years. You lived 15 miles from where the shooting took place. Tell us about this community.
Lewiston is a Franco-American community. It's an industrial city. It's not rural, but it's very close-knit. It's where everybody knows everybody. The sister city, Auburn, across from the river, is a smaller town, but it's combined. We call it LA. It's a very close-knit community, a family-oriented community. These two sites were family night, both at the bar and at the bowling alley. So the shock, which is now wearing off, has now become fear, because we have someone running loose very close to us. He has hundreds of acres by where he lives. This man's an Army reservist. He's an expert in firearms. And everybody is on edge in the town today.
So Ken, can you help us understand how common violent crime is or isn't in the state of Maine, and how that contributes to just how shocked people are?
Exactly. We had last year in the state of Maine a total 1.4 million people. We had 29 murders, and that was high. It's usually never more than 20. One year we had an entire year, a calendar year, without one murder. You had 18 people dead, 13 injured in one shooting incident. It's unheard of. We were called, Lewiston actually was ranked as one of the best places to retire by Forbes magazine because of its safety. The FBI last year ranked Maine as the safest nonviolent state in the country. This simply doesn't happen here. That's what puts us, not only are we in shock, but in fear, because we don't deal with this kind of violence. We leave our houses unlocked. We leave our cars unlocked. We're not used to being on edge or in guard. So it's a very fearful situation. We're not used to being locked in. One example is, of course, I live in Freeport, which is known for LL Beans, the big mail order company. LL Bean never closes. They have no locks on their doors. They closed one time for the funeral of the founder. It closed yesterday. That is unheard of. Businesses, banks, shopping centers, schools, colleges, they're all closed. The highways are absolutely, it's like a ghost town on the highways. Nobody's coming out. Everybody's fearful. It's really a shock to our system. This is not the way Maine is.
All right, Ken Altshuler, thank you very much for that perspective. I actually hadn't thought about the bean store. I've been there many times in my life, and that is a remarkable point that underscores just how devastating this has been for everyone. I really appreciate your time, sir. And thanks to all of you as well for joining us. I am Casey Hunt. We're going to have much more on the manhunt coming up on CNN This Morning, which starts right now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Poppy Harlow with Phil Mattingly in New York, and this morning that desperate manhunt continues for a mass shooter in Maine nearly 35 hours after the shooting rampage that left 18 people dead at a bowling alley at a bar and grill. At least 80 FBI agents have joined the hunt for the suspect, Robert Card, and the Coast Guard is also helping search by air and sea after Card's car was found at a boat launch.
Last night, we saw SWAT teams with armored trucks converge on Card's last known address. They spotlighted the house and got onto a megaphone to say, "Come out with your hands up," but apparently nobody was inside. Police tell CNN they'll be back in the neighborhood today. As for motive, there's a key theory that is emerging. Law enforcement sources telling CNN Card recently broke up with his girlfriend. The bowling alley, Shemengi's bar, were two places they liked to frequent. His ex-girlfriend was apparently signed up to play in a tournament at the bar the same night as the shooting.
We do have some of the names of the victims to share with you this morning. These are 6 of the victims' names who have been identified by family members: Brian McFarlane, Joseph Walker, Trisha Asselin, Tommy Conrad, Peyton Brewer, and Arthur Hardy Stroud. Joseph Walker was the manager at Schmenge's Bar and Grill. His dad says Walker apparently tried to stop the gunman with a knife.
Picked up a butcher knife and went after the gunman to try to stop him from killing other people. And that's when he shot my son to death, trying to save some more lives that he ended up losing his life.
His son, clearly a hero. He will join us later in the program. Omar Jimenez starts our coverage in Lewiston this morning. Omar, what can you tell us?
Well, Poppy and Phil, we're about as close to the bowling alley as police are allowing us to get. This is where 7 people were found dead of the 18 total. And this is where police say 40-year-old Robert Karp first began shooting before minutes later making his way to the bar and grill. That said, the sun is getting ready to rise on what is now a second day with the main suspect in both of these mass shootings still on the loose. The Lewiston mayor, along with emergency alerts we got on our phone, they're telling residents to shelter in place, to continue sheltering in place for a second day. When it comes to the search itself, they are expected to pick it back up in the Bowdoin area east of here, searching through some of his known addresses. It was outside of his last known address that many people, we were all paying attention to increased police activity there. They had a spotlight on the house. They were saying over the speakers to come up with your hands up, come out with your hands up. Well, state police say that was essentially just standard search warrant procedure when executing a warrant, and they did not find him there. They did find a vehicle associated with the suspect elsewhere, and they found a gun inside, though unclear if that gun was the one used in these shootings. And that vehicle was found at a boat launch, and it's part of why you mentioned the variety of sources that are helping search here. It's part of why the Coast Guard is assisting with the search by air and by water, just to make sure they've got all of their bases covered. And we're a long way from finalizing any motive, but the working theory, as sources have told our John Miller, is that the suspect recently broke up with his girlfriend, and that part of why these two places were targeted were places they used to frequent. But it's all part of an investigation that is happening at the same time as a critical manhunt. And as residents continue to ask that question, when will this person be caught?
Omar, some sense, or at least theories related to the motive. We had some top lines very quickly yesterday about who the suspect actually is. What do we know about him at this point?
Yeah, so we knew he was an Army reservist. Well, we just learned, or we later learned, that in July he was referred to essentially a local hospital because he had been acting erratically, and that we learned that from military officials. That said, family members of his and former coworkers said that they don't know that he had any long-term history of mental health issues, at least that they knew of. But also take a listen to one of his neighbors when asked about some of that history as well.
He just didn't seem like that kind of individual. Like I said, people have problems, but you don't expect them to go off the deep end like that. Like I said, when I saw it on the news last night, I was shocked.
And it was a shock to the community as well, one that they're still continuing to live through, as many continue to recover in the hospital, with loved ones hoping that their conditions improve. Phil, Poppy.
All right, Omar Jimenez live on the ground. Keep us posted, please. Thank you. Well, tips from the public are crucial in a search like this one. The chief of police from neighboring Lisbon, Maine, spoke about that yesterday.
We've had everything from people calling about, noises in the basement, noises in the woods, suspicious people, gunshots, all night long since the incident in Lewiston. We have our whole department working. I encourage everybody to call if they see something suspicious.
Joining us now is Ed Davis. He's the Boston Police Commissioner during the Marathon bombing in 2013. Commissioner, we appreciate your time. To that point, I believe it was a tip from the public that helped track down Johar Tsarnaev at the end. He was in a boat, I believe. For all of the tools in the toolkit that law enforcement has right now, how critical is public help?
Well, good morning, Phil. It's very critical. Oftentimes in cases like this, it'll be one single call that leads to discovering and apprehending the suspect, and that's really what we're hoping for here. But you also have to remember that there will be hundreds, sometimes thousands, of tips that will be coming in to the police department, to the command post, And those tips have to be managed because, you know, you don't know which one is the right one. So it's a very sophisticated process that needs to be put in place to manage those tips and to make sure that each one of them is run to ground so that you don't miss something.
Commissioner Davis, I'll never forget the feeling of Boston when you guys put it on lockdown in those final, days and hours leading to him. But what was also very different being there covering that to this is that was the city, right? And everyone was staying inside to help you guys try to locate him. This is a really rural area, very wooded. Can you just talk about how that's different than what your teams were going through?
It is a significant difference. The teams will be operating in the same fashion. They'll establish a grid. They'll put a perimeter on the outside and slowly collapse that perimeter as they're searching. And at the same time that's happening, tips will be followed up in different places as they come in. So there'll be teams going out to different locations. But the fundamental difference here is that if this guy gets into the woods, he has an advantage. He's there first. He knows where he's going to be, and it's a very difficult situation for the officers who are up there. The fish and game wardens, the natural resource officers, they're going to be crucial to this if this guy is actually in the woods.
To that point, and given what we've seen, you can see what we're showing right now on the ground, what it looks like, the wooded areas, how rural it can be. What's the most critical component if he's in the woods at this point?
Well, clearly, the use of technology is going to be vital. So, using night vision equipment if they're operating in the dark. But I think the most crucial thing, and we saw this play out in Pennsylvania, is the use of thermal imaging from aircraft and helicopters up above. The aircraft can get pretty high and still focus on an area. The suspect might not know that they're there, and then he won't be able to take measures to conceal himself. There are ways that you can beat that technology, and he probably knows them being in the military. But if you get the plane up high enough and he doesn't know it's there, they might be able to find him. That makes it so much easier for the officers because they have a point that they can advance on without just sort of tripping across somebody, which could happen if you don't have that technology.
And that was really crucial in them finding Daniel Cavalcante just a couple of weeks ago. Commissioner Davis, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Puppy.
Of course, we'll continue our coverage, of course, for this ongoing manhunt for the suspect accused of murdering 18 people in Maine. We are also, of course, following the breaking news in the Middle East. The Pentagon says the United States has carried out 2 airstrikes against facilities linked to Iranian-backed militias in Syria.
And in Israel, for a second night, the IDF says it conducted, quote, targeted raids inside Gaza. And the humanitarian crisis is only growing worse inside. We're live from Israel ahead.
I was put on earth to work here. I don't have hobbies. I don't believe in weekends. The only thing I love more than emails and spreadsheets is meetings about emails and spreadsheets. So when do I start?
Everyone, people with all the answers, get all the answers, ask Mark, accountants and advisors.
The U.S. defends itself and hits 2 Iranian-backed bases that have fired at them. A song by Paul Beckman, Paul Rimble song, also the new first leader of humankind in the free world, created October 27th, 2023. The USA has fired back and defended itself at 2 Iranian-backed militias that fired at them. They took out some storage facilities of weapons by those militias. Yeah, if you fire upon the USA, get ready because they're not gonna take it. They're gonna fire back. They're not gonna take it. They're gonna fire back, yeah. They're not gonna take it, they're gonna fire back, yeah. They want to try to keep an escalation of other countries down. They don't want everything to spread to other fronts, so you be cautious, yeah. They're warning any other backed militias by Iran. Stand down, stand down, stand down, stand down. You try to harm us, well, we'll hit you back. We'll get you back. You'll be sorry. So, the rest of you actors in the Middle East, you hold your peace now. The rest of you actors in the Middle East, you hold your peace now. We got the big stick, and we'll use it on you. Well, we don't want to, there's no need to, so you just stay where you are. Don't get involved in the war, Israel with Hamas. Do that so far, don't get involved, and we'll all be fine. Don't get involved, stand down. Don't start another front. Oh yeah, we got a presence here now. If you try to attack us, we'll get you. Stand down now. Stand down now. Stand down. Stand down now. Stand down.
It's notable, and I should know where I am now. I'm in the Golan Heights, and Syria is just behind me there. It's just a reminder that when you get into the northern parts of Israel, you have Lebanon with Hezbollah just directly to the north, and when you look to the east of Israel, then of course you have Iranian-backed militias based in Syria. What was notable to me in Lloyd Austin's statement was that these attacks were targeting a facility that had not just Iran-backed militias there, but also is known to be a base for Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps. So specifically Iranian personnel. Not clear if they were there at the time, but this is a base that has been used by them. So you can look at this strike as a direct U.S. strike on Iranian forces in the region. And that's significant because, of course, as Lloyd Austin said in explaining these strikes, they looked at those attacks on U.S. forces, not just in Syria, but also in Iraq, as Iran threatening U.S. personnel in the region. And Austin was very specific, saying the U.S. will protect its forces and it will respond accordingly when they see Iran and others target those forces directly. It just gets to, Poppy, something we've been talking about frequently these last several weeks, the tinderbox that this region is. You have multiple players. It's not just Israel and Hamas. You have U.S. forces here, you have Iran-backed forces here, and that provides the elements, at least, for potential escalation. And these strikes in that broader background are significant.
To that point, is there a red line? Is there a threshold here, right? You talk about narrowly tailored. This is self-defense from the Defense Secretary's statement, but going after facilities where IRGC troops actually are, do they know? Is there an understanding here of, well, this is reciprocal, it's not escalatory? How does this work?
You know, narrowly tailored is in the eyes of the beholder, you might say, right? Because, for instance, those Iranian strikes, while they didn't say, for instance, fire a missile at a U.S. warship in the Eastern Mediterranean, that would be quite direct. But these are militias and forces known to be backed by Iran that threaten the lives of U.S. forces. 21 injuries, minor injuries, but you know, if a rocket lands 10 feet closer in one direction, those minor injuries can become fatal. And as I understand it, there's a U.S. contractor in one of those bases that died of cardiac arrest while sheltering from those attacks. So, you know, those red lines are blurry, and that's what provides the danger of further escalation.
Colonel Layton, I thought it was interesting that in Lloyd Austin's remarks, he made clear to separate this from the war between Israel and Hamas, talking about this as self-defense, a response to what these Iran-backed militias did. Why does that matter in this moment?
It really matters, Poppy, because what you're dealing with here is the need for the United States not to get involved in the situation between Hamas and Israel. And this is a clear delineation that it's a force protection issue for the United States. And as Jim and you have outlined, it's very clear that what we're trying to do here is maintain a presence in the Middle East and, of course, go after ISIS and other terrorist groups, but not get involved in anything related to Gaza, at least not directly. So that's really what we're dealing with, is an issue where the United States is trying to make it very clear to the Iranians that they should not be attacking U.S. forces in any way or in any form, and that's the kind of thing that the Defense Secretary was trying to say.
Colonel Layton, deterrence has been so critical. Should we expect now Iranian proxies to fire back at U.S. forces and this just to continue, or how will you know if this has grown bigger?
Well, I think that would be one indicator, Phil. If the Iranian forces went in and, you know, if they sent more drone attacks against U.S. installations or wherever there is a presence of U.S. forces, that would be a key indicator that the Iranians are trying to up the ante in this case. But in the bigger picture, what we have to look at is how Iran is going to respond in other areas, not just in places like Syria and Iraq, but also in the Persian Gulf. And that really will matter in terms of, you know, force protection for the naval assets that we have there, for the air assets that are in that region, and it will also matter in terms of international shipping and things like that. So it's going to be really important for us to keep a lid on this, and hopefully this is a message that will do that.
All right, Jim Sciutto and Colonel Cedric Layton, thanks guys, appreciate it.